It is our video. It is our video. So yeah, you look cool. You're there.
Yeah.
All right. 3, 2, 1. Sarah Ferreira.
You got it.
I have no ability to roll. You do it now.
Okay, just with intention.
You do the Portuguese roll.
My mindset here, my rolling mindset. Sarah Ferreira.
Ferreira. So it's more of an H.
That may have been the best ever.
Sarah Ferreira.
Yes.
Good.
Yes,
and now it's recorded.
But it usually is Sarah Ferreira, right? Ferreira. That's what, you usually hear.
That's white boy talk.
Right?
That's white boy talk.
Yeah. Take what you can get.
And so, but that is kind of funny because people probably try to not make fun of it, like, ha ha ha, say that 5 times fast. Like,
yeah, well, this is crazy. It's just so funny that all the types of people who are out in the world, right? The way that I run my intake flow, right, with new clients, right, people who might be interested in my approach or services, is that I jump on initial consult call with them, right? So once upon a time, someone told me that Sarah Ferreira sounded like a rat's name. A rat's name. And I thought to myself, well, this was really the shortest period of time that it's ever taken to determine whether or not you are good at my services. So I was like, I just don't feel like this is a good dynamic already.
Wait, like, so this...
Wait, this helped me this clear,
Does she call up and be like,
no.
Hi, is this Sarah Ferreira? That's a rat's name.
I told her, she's like, is this Sarah? Is this Sarah? So I said my full name. This sounds like a rat's name. And I was like, okay. All right.
So what's the segue
this
then?
Is unique. And I just moved right along. And yeah, but really very clear, very quickly. I thought, this is just not a good dynamic. I'm feeling this out.
That's a pretty good part of being self-employed, right?
Oh,
like you kind of get to pick and choose.
You so totally.
Like you see a problem client right away, right?
Oh yes. Yes. I feel like I've established, 3 hoops and then, a couple of hurdles, right, to jump over and through in order to get to the point where you feel like, yeah, all right, we're good. Because, I think there's a lot of, potentially a lot of expectations that aren't really where they need to be, right? When you're thinking about approaching nutrition in a totally different way than popular culture, right? It might set you up for. And so I think for people to get to that place where they're kind of in the zone and ready, to think about nutrition in terms of a whole integrative functional approach versus just a meal plan, right? Or, a list of foods. I think it takes, for me, a little bit more of an intensive screening process, to make sure someone is really the right fit. Because it's never, just so easy, right? I think sometimes as people would like it to be, I feel, in order to really get the type of results that I want to help people, to achieve. So
are people, what's the biggest or the most common problem you see with people? Is it like you mentioned meal plan, people just calling up and saying, hey, tell me what to eat, and then you're like, hey, it's bigger than that.
Yeah. I think that's dietetics as a whole, right?
This is for you too, if you need.
You
I don't know
so
what's in that big thing.
This is water.
All right.
This is water.
As a nutritionist, dietitian, heavy on the water, I imagine.
Hydration of all sorts.
I drink probably about 10 of these a day.
Yeah.
10. I drink so much water.
This is my biggie. If I'm out and about, I'll try to get through about 2 of these during the course of my out and about the section of my day, But I drink quite a bit when I wake up in the morning. It was lemon water this morning, and then move on to that and all of that.
Do clients have a problem with water? Is that a big thing too?
Hydration. Oh, yeah, constantly. Yeah, but what I find, as far as kind of expectations that are not quite consistent, with maybe what I would provide, is people they kind of call up and say, so these are the 2 biggies. Either, do you think you could write a meal plan, right, for me or for XYZ? And, I said to people, well, that's the least of our worries, because you could Google meal plan, right, for XYZ, and great, you'd get a printout. Like, if that's all you need from me, probably don't really need me, probably don't really need
so that's
me.
The first bit of honesty you hit.
Okay,
good.
Yeah, because of course, there's professional meal planning softwares, and you can get pretty nitty gritty with things, but like this isn't what it all is. And the second is food sensitivities. People will, usually email, right? And just ask, oh yeah, so do you offer food sensitivity testing? Can I just do this test, get the results? And that's another one where, I think there's a lot of misperceptions out there, right? Where people think, I'm not feeling good, I'm just going to get this list of foods that I will do well with or not do well with, and then I'll be well on my way, right? Instead of really realizing that, the immune system, right, and gut health and exposure to foods and antigens is really oftentimes just kind of a representation of what's going on big picture. You know what I mean? And so just knowing that you have, 12 food sensitivities, right, doesn't really necessarily get you to where you want to go, right? Because you can sidestep a lot of issues, right, by just having, lists of foods, right, to eat this, don't eat this. But if you really want to get kind of to I think of it a root cause, right, oftentimes you're thinking, okay, so what's the mechanism here? Why am I reacting to all these foods, right? And then maybe you use the test as a tool.
Explain food sensitivity. What is that?
Yeah, so food sensitivities, and I don't always know if people really even understand what they're asking for, because I think people, it's confusing, right? Because you have food allergies, you have food intolerances, you have food sensitivities, but really, allergies, I think pretty clearly most people know, right? It's like, okay, so it's often IgE, IgG, and it's that immediate, right, trouble
don't
breathing,
run through those
anaphylaxis.
Don't you truck right through those those acronyms. What was that? IgGs and what was that?
Yeah, so it's just really basically a response where your body is producing an antibody, right, to something you're taking in. So it's often a response to a protein, right? And so, for instance, really common allergy would be to dairy, right, or to eggs, right? So, take in, you make some scrambled eggs, you're allergic to them, you eat them, and then your body's like, okay, don't like that, right? So it produces this antibody, and then after that, you have all these reactions, right? It's very much an immune system moderated or mediated response, right? And it's pretty immediate. It can be life-threatening, right? So, but then everything else I think is really cloudy, right? And that's where people get really confused, like what is going on with me when I'm not feeling good after I'm eating, But there's food, the way I think of it is there's food intolerances, which is really more of a digestive issue, right? So most common example would be lactose intolerance, right? So many people, eat ice cream, right, and are sick for 12 hours, whatever it might be. It's just kind of sitting there, not digesting, gas, bloating. So that's a really common example of an intolerance. But then sensitivities are super interesting in that what's happening with food sensitivities is your body is mounting a different type of response. So it is immune system involvement, but it's not the same pathway. It's not IgG, it's not IgE. So instead, the type of testing that I do is called a type 4. It's a hypersensitivity response. So it's basically like your body's in overdrive, reacting to these foods, and it's just not a really nice, healthy response. So what happens in that type of reaction, and some of the pathways are similar, some of the responses are similar, although the pathways are different, but you might release things like, say, histamine, right, or prostaglandins, these kind of inflammatory mediators, right, that might cause things like abdominal pain, cramping, rashes, right, redness, right, blotches, joint pain, things like that, kind of all these inflammatory mediators. So yeah, I think people kind of recognize in themselves, I'm having all of these symptoms that are indicating I might have a food sensitivity, right? It's not just digestive, but maybe there's other stuff going on. Maybe I'm just not feeling well, I'm not thinking clearly. That's something I hear over and over and over and over again, right? A lot of IBS, a lot of nothing. It's like this gut-brain thing. It's amazing, right? They're so closely connected. And so when someone is really in the zone to tackle all the issues around food sensitivities, usually it really comes back to thinking, okay, so, let's work on gut health, right? Let's work on stress reduction. Let's think about calming down your immune system, trying to hit the reset button, right? Do the work we need to do. And then eventually the goal is that we can get your body to a place where it's maybe not quite as sensitive to so many things, right? Because food sensitivities, it's kind of like often a result of just mixed signals, right? It's like your body's reacting to maybe even almonds, right? Or cinnamon or things that otherwise, they're not bad foods, right? They're not bad for you, but for that individual, they're just having a response that's not supportive, so really
cinnamon.
Interesting in that way. Cinnamon. Yeah, cinnamon. I know.
See, you named two things. Eggs sensitivity would break my heart. I go nuts with eggs. Yesterday, so my girlfriend last night, she came home and she was looking to make some eggs. Mm-hmm. And I typically, at least every day, I have 3 eggs, at least. Yes. But the last 2 days, I had 6 eggs each day. I went through the last bit of eggs last night. She's like, where are the eggs? I said, sorry, I went a bit crazy on them. And what I love about here, you can get local, like chicken eggs. We don't buy it from the grocery store. You get farmer's market eggs, which takes that close. Deeper, darker. So imagining being allergic to that would it would destroy my world. I eat so many eggs. I know. So what you mentioned gut health a lot. Now this is something I've only started to learn about the last 2 years or so, maybe. How do people have any idea what you're talking about when you bring that up and the significance of gut flora and gut health?
I think it depends where they're at. A lot of people who make it to me have done a lot of their own research, right? And they're really up on the latest, right? I just had someone in my office a couple weeks ago, and I suggested a book to her that had just come out that I haven't read. I know the author, I'm familiar with the work. I heard him talking about it on a podcast, and I just thought this would be perfect. And she's like, oh yeah, I already got that from the library. I'm halfway through, right? So oftentimes, the people who are coming to me, because I, have some hoops to jump through, right? I mean, you really have to be the right person to kind of, be in that relationship, the professional relationship. They've really tried a number of things, right, already, and often are struggling to really figure out what's the best approach for them, right? They have all this head knowledge, right? Where they think, okay, I've read and read and read and read, but I'm still not feeling well. I still haven't reached my health goals. And so I think many people when they, gut health is a term I think is all over the place, right? Have a lot of people who are coming to me talking about leaky gut, right? But I don't think they really understand maybe how it applies to them, right? Or what to do about it oftentimes. It's kind of like they've heard the terms, right? Mm-hmm. But I don't think the connections are always very clear, because I find that a lot of what I'm doing is really walking people through kind of a timeline, a matrix, and doing that really detailed assessment and helping people connect the dots, and I get a lot of, especially when testing comes in, I get a lot of relief, as a response, because people will say, oh, that's okay, that makes sense, that's why, it's not because there's something wrong with me, right? I've heard that, right? There's actually something physical going on here that I can address, right? And so that's really empowering, empowering for people, I think, when you can really bring it down to an individual level and try to personalize a plan as much as possible, which kind of goes back to that whole like meal plan printed off the internet thing. Right. Right? Like that meal plan doesn't understand, your struggles, right? Your relationship with food, individually, what therapeutically makes sense for you, none of
but
those,
so you're saying you show them test results and like, hey, are you saying like the sensitivity test, like, hey, so this might be a problem?
So it could be, so the testing that I'm able to do as a dietitian, being in New York, there's like more laws on the book, right? So there's a lot that I could do if I lived in Massachusetts, but we work with what we have, right?
Or Vermont, I'm sure it's the Wild West. I'm sure you do.
I know. Someone's like, second office, but food sensitivity testing, and then I've been doing a bit with genomics and nutrigenetics as well, just genetic testing that basically gives you some insight, right, into how your how you're utilizing nutrients, you know, and so that's another place where people often have a lot of insight. So I'll give you an example. So one of the kind of genetic SNPs, right, or changes that you might see in my realm relates to the COMT gene. And so COMT is really associated with things like dopamine metabolism, right, and stress hormone metabolism. So if someone has an issue with their COMT gene, their COMT, they tend to have issues getting rid of estrogen in a healthful way, and they tend to hold on to more dopamine, more epinephrine, right? So more of that stress hormone. So they tend to always kind of be on their toes, tense, right? Kind of ready to go, feeling like they just have a really hard time calming down, And that is closely related oftentimes to nutrient balance, right? Because you can improve the way that your body metabolizes, right? So the estrogen, the dopamine, the epinephrine, if you make sure you have enough magnesium, right, is a really good example, right? Certain B vitamins. And so just knowing, right, if someone's coming in really high anxiety levels, right, feels like I just can never get into Zen. Talking about stress reduction, right? Thinking about meditation, they just know that they're struggling with that piece. They always feel on edge, right? And they're not comfortable, right, in their own bodies. That you can show them, okay, you've got a little bit of a genetic predisposition here, right? To just struggle, right? A little bit more with getting rid of these stress hormones, right? And managing this response in a healthful way. But guess what? Here's what we can do about it, right? Now that we know, let's be intelligent about the way that we design breakfast tomorrow. Let's bring in more pumpkin seeds, right? Let's have, let's skip the bread, right? And do kale, right? Do a bed of kale on the bottom so you get that magnesium. Maybe we need to supplement a little bit. Right.
Speaking of substituting, last night I did cheat, and it was it was with full knowledge. It was a full conscious decision that I was like, I'm probably gonna have to admit this to Sarah tomorrow. I went out for a burger, they were, they offered like the keto burger with lettuce and instead of the bun, and I'm like, I can't do that. I'm not there yet. Like, and I don't eat, like, I'm very anti-bread. I would say last year, and pasta. Last year, I think I had pasta 3 times. The whole year, which is extraordinary for me, and I think anybody
and for the standard American.
Standard American's like, what? So, and that means I've cut out sandwiches and pizza also 4 times last year. So last night I was like, I still can't do the burger with, like, I cut out that other stuff, but I want a burger. But I did get a wheat bread. Experience. I mean, not like marginally better, like not even significantly better than the white bread, but I was like, I'm going to have to admit that to Sarah. Now, I never heard this, what you just said. I've never heard this phrase this way, getting rid of estrogen, getting rid of epinephrine, getting rid of...
Yeah, and I just think when I say that, what I mean is just being able to have the right amount at the right time, right? And then to rid your body of excess, because if you just think about it, if you have... tons and tons of stress hormones on board, right? Epinephrine, you just feel wired all the time, right? And so it makes it really hard to, to concentrate, to sleep, right? That type of thing. I mean, when you think about estrogen metabolism, I mean, there's a whole host, right, of health stuff, right? And I do a lot with I work exclusively with women because I feel like it's just a whole niche and there's so much to know and so much to keep up on, right? And so when you think about estrogen sensitive cancers, right, or issues like ovarian issues or things like that is hot flashes, right? That's estrogen, right? Metabolism oftentimes, right? So just making sure that, you have the support on board that you need to be able to kind of, just make sure that, you're breaking down what you need to break down in a way that's safe and supportive for your health long term, as prevention and also...
Educate me. Estrogen causes hot flashes?
Well, so what will often happen is... Yeah, so basically, when you're thinking about, the phases of a cycle, like a women's cycle, right, you have these curves of both estrogen and progesterone, right, and so they'll kind of go up and down, right, throughout the course of a women's cycle, over the course of a month. And so when you're thinking about just healthy estrogen metabolism, you're thinking about just helping those curves. I think of it as becoming a bit more smooth, right, everything just working together. And so, if someone is coming in with, especially on like the estrogen sensitive cancer side of things, right, where maybe they've had a history of that, that's where I'm just thinking, okay, so I'm not going to tell you, right, I can prevent cancer recurrence, right, but I can tell you that you have this SNP, right, this genetic predisposition, or you have these dietary patterns, right, that are probably not supportive to healthy estrogen metabolism. So if that's one of your goals, right, if that's one of the big things that you're concerned about, let's focus in on that, right, because estrogen basically breaks down along a couple of different pathways, right, so there's like a 2-OH, a 4-OH, and so you can get, I can't, but like an integrative MD could, or other people could, you can get really detailed testing to figure out where your body's going down the pathways, but if we're thinking kind of root causes, to me, the genetic piece is a good place to start, because you just know, okay, so what are you starting off with, right? And then if you want the rest of that information, like, I can't do that for you. If I lived in Massachusetts, I could, but you can kind of go from there.
What's different? What's different? No, you can feel free to take me in as deep into the weeds as you want. You want to talk about 2-OH pathways? And please take me on that journey. I will keep up as best I can. So when you say you're doing these genetic tests, is this like a full blood panel? Is this? Oh
yeah, that's a good question. Yeah, so basically with genetics, I've done. Yeah, so I guess I should say, so if someone is thinking about, okay, what to do with their full genetic panel, they should go see a genetic counselor, right? If someone is concerned about their risk for Alzheimer's, right, or things that really aren't directly nutrition related, right? I mean, there's a lot of nuances there, but basically, if someone is thinking about, okay, so how does this gene set me up for this health outcome, right? I would say go see a genetic counselor. But if you're thinking, how does this gene set me up to metabolize nutrients that I'm taking in differently, or how does it influence my need for specific nutrients, like, great. That's me, right? That's me. We can do that. And so there's a couple of companies that I've really been loving and using. So one is DNA Life. DNA Life is one, and so they offer basically a swab-based test. So if you've done 23andMe,
oh my God, not yet. I want to so bad.
Okay, so yeah,
I want to find out I'm American Indian so bad.
Yeah, so 23andMe is really, really neat, and there's things you can do with that too, which I'll tell you about. But DNA Life they do it all. So they send you their kit, you do the swab. They're actually based in the Netherlands, which is kind of funny. I just really like it. I think they do a good job, so I've been following them, and I take advantage of their expertise. But basically, you send your swab away, they do your testing, and then they produce panels. And so they do a few that I've used in practice. So they do a DNA Sport, which talks about recovery time, right? And really, what type of movement might be most supportive to you. Again, just based on associations that are in the literature. So some people, for instance, might be a little bit more prone to higher inflammation after activity, so might need a little bit more recovery time, Another that they do is an estrogen panel, right? So they bring in all of the SNPs, that makes sense. They do another that's optimal health, right? So it's really broad, and that would capture things like the MTHFR gene, right? Which is like tons and tons of people are talking about that, but also things like a little bit of estrogen metabolism, the COMT, and then they just came out with a skin too. I haven't seen that yet, but that's new. I just put a skin, so I don't know anything about that, but just ordered it for someone, right? And so I'll have those results back in probably a week or two, so that's neat. But then there's another program that I'm using often because it's a bit less expensive from Pure Encapsulations, which is one of those professional grade supplement companies, right? And so they have this platform called Pure Genomics. So the way this platform works, it's awesome, is you go get your 23andMe results run, right? And you can do just the ancestry. So it's what, $97?
So the normal $100 one,
just
you're saying?
Normal $100. Okay. You don't even need the health info because 23andMe gives you the raw data. A lot of people don't realize that, right? But when you send away, you can download all the raw. So you have this long file, like a text file, right? Which is all these RS numbers, and you go down. So you can upload, it's super simple. You upload this text file into Pure Genomics, and Pure Genomics spits out basically what they say are clinically relevant SNPs, right? So clinically relevant genetic changes, right? That are super relevant to the type of work that I do, right? With nutrition and thinking about how you feel, right? Depending on what you're eating. They basically produce, so some of the things that they'll show you in the diagram, and if you get a chance to look at it, it's just really amazing. So they look at MTHFR, they look at kind of the whole methylation cycle, it's called. So MTHFR, MTFF, they look at COMT, they look at your conversion, your kind of genetic predisposition to converting plant-based sources of omega-3s to long chain, right? Another thing a lot of people don't realize is that if someone's following a vegetarian or a vegan dietary pattern and they're not getting in those long chain DHA, right, EPA from fish, basically, right, and they're like, oh, it's fine, I eat flaxseed all day, every day, great, which that may be okay if you're converting well, but if genetically you're not set up for that, it might not be the best plan, right? And it's something you might want to make a decision based off of how you're feeling, right? And what's going on with you, right? Vitamin A conversion, vitamin D conversion, they lay that out. Also there's a SNP that has to do with BDNF production, like that. It's like, I call it miracle grow for the brain, right? Oftentimes, actually, you mentioned meditation earlier, right? Exercise, meditation are known, right, to increase this BDNF, right? So it helps with learning and memory, retaining information, and kind of having it available. So they basically show you, again, if you have a genetic predisposition to not do quite as well with producing, right, BDNF. So it's a really nice panel that then, we can take people back to and say, okay, so there's these really simple things we can do with nutrition, right? To address these SNPs, or maybe do you need a little more detox support, right? Maybe do we need to bring this supplement or this supplement in, or think about these food choices. So really for genetics, it's, for me, I've found that the Pure Genomics platform and then also this company, DNA Life, right, have been really helpful in just pulling it all together, because there's so much, right, we don't know about genetics, and so I really appreciate that there's companies out there that take the time to comb through the research, keep up on it, and really establish, okay, so, is this something that we can do something about? Can we confidently say, right, that we have the ability to produce an outcome while addressing this SNP? Because if not, it probably doesn't really make the most sense to build it into a report that you're giving people, right? Because then you just create confusion. Right. You just create confusion. And so I know there are some practitioners out there who will use full, they'll really use the raw data and go through, and they feel comfortable doing that. They can pull more out. That just takes, I think, many, many years of practice, and clinical experience.
And are we really there yet and really understanding?
That's a really good question. Yeah, it's a really good question. Yeah.
Just what I've witnessed, what we've, just think back 10 years ago.
Think back 10 years ago.
What? It's a different world.
Yeah, no, and this Pure Genomics platform, didn't exist.
And I think about what my parents taught me as a kid about eating and nutrition. I'm like, you guys didn't know what you were talking about. We were still dumb monkeys, just eating. Here, it's on TV. Eat that. Eat Frosted Flakes.
Yes.
It was so bad. My parents gave me such terrible nutrition advice. You mentioned about this test, and you mentioned vegetarian and vegans and genetic makeup, genetic. I forget the term you used, predispositions.
Yeah, predispositions.
Is there anyone that it is genetically advantageous to be a vegan or vegetarian, or do you find that you need those amino acids, those long chain amino acids from your fishes, from your meats?
Yeah, that's a good question. You know, I think when it comes to genetics, so I think there's a lot of other frameworks you can apply, but when it comes to genetics, the big things I think about is really, so there's a SNP that's related to saturated fat metabolism, so I think that's pretty relevant. It's one of the ApoE, right, one of the ApoE genes, and then also the conversion, right, from the plant-based sources, ALA, right, alpha linoleic acid, to the long chain. So I think those are relevant. You know, I'm always on board with a plant-based lifestyle, right, always, right, because I think that's the foundation. But I at least in this point, right, in my journey, my evolution, I do feel like most people benefit from really high quality, right, strategically chosen, you know, animal proteins or fish, eggs, right, because I do think it can be much more challenging, and this isn't a genetic piece, this is another framework, but it can be challenging to really optimize micronutrient status when you're relying on just plants alone, right? Exception being, perhaps, if you're the type of person who is able to take 3 days and soak your beans, right, and sprout them, right, and take those 72 hours, let a little fermentation happen, and then cook them, right? I don't know too many people, right, who are like that, because most of us are on the go, right? We're busy, we have a lot of, and so yeah, I think that's always a part of the conversation with, okay, so what's going on with you, right? So what physical symptoms are you experiencing? What health concerns are top of mind for you? And then how do we get to where you want to go? Because if this is looking to me like a blood sugar imbalance, right? If it feels like a zinc deficiency issue, right? Because you've been a vegetarian for 10 or 15 years, right? And, you know, we're wondering if you're not absorbing or utilizing, right, some of these things well. You know, at the very least, right, would it be a good idea to consider an experiment, right, where you go maybe 3 months, right, maybe 4 months, and think, what would it be like, right, to introduce, maybe it's wild salmon, you know, a couple times a week. Maybe it's grass-fed beef, right? Just maybe for 2 weeks, maybe even for 2 weeks, right? 3 times a week, right? And just track, right? Just track what's happening, right? So what's the end point? You know, what's going on, and how is your experience of your anxiety, right? Your energy, right? How is it different based off of these variables, you know, that we've changed or controlled? Yeah, so kind of big picture is, you know, I think that vegetarian or vegan diets can be therapeutic, you know, no question. I think they can be great resets, right? And I think a vegetarian diet, if it's very well designed, right, can be supportive to certain people, you know, as long as the genetic predisposition is there, as long as they have the time and the resources to be able to, to see through, right, some of those maybe absorption issues or food preparation issues, right, not just canned beans
right.
on top of everything, right, but making sure complete proteins, adequate amounts, thinking about micronutrient balance, thinking about phytates and grains and all of that. But you know, a vegan lifestyle, I think, can be, my feeling, right, this is my opinion, my professional stance, is I think it can be challenging for very, very long periods of time, right, to have an optimal nutritional status, you know. And so, you know, I think different people have different opinions, you know, than I do, for sure. But just because I'm really focusing in on, you know, women who feel like they're not firing on all cylinders, right? Who are struggling with energy and brain fog, right? Not thinking well, who just cannot get control over their health. For me, top priority is often, okay, how can we deliver nutrients, right, in the way that it makes the most sense for you, that's going to give you the best chance of absorbing, right? And so oftentimes high quality animal proteins, right, make a whole lot of sense. You know, even if it's just eggs and some fish, right? Even if you're not thinking beyond that, even just eggs and fish, they go a long way, and meeting some of those, those challenges, right, that otherwise you might have, which
now
is
that
exclusive plant-based
sorry
diet.
Are you now are you talking when specifically vegans and vegetarians, you do try to steer them down the, hey, let's mix in some grass-fed, like high quality stuff, like the salmon, like the grass-fed beef, or do you find that there's immediate people come in and say, there's no way, I'm just doing meat, I'm not going to change, or I'm sorry, I'm not going to stop being a vegetarian, I'm not going to stop being a vegan, help me otherwise. What are the alternatives?
Sure, what are the alternatives? Yep. Yeah, I think of myself as really, really a guide, right? And so, there's someone I worked with really very recently who was sworn to a vegan dietary pattern, right? That was how she came to me, right? And I told her,
like a blood oath.
I
will never.
She was absolutely. She was there.
Chicken again.
She just felt like, So initially, it was, I just feel. I feel more comfortable. I feel less bloated. I just feel like I'm in a better place. I feel like my health is just, I have more control over my health when I follow this vegan dietary pattern. And it turned out for her, and this was really self-identified, right? This is what she came to. It turned out it really had a lot more to do for her with restriction and with a really disordered eating pattern, and really more the control piece, and being able to avoid social situations around food, and being able to say no, to a lot of things so they didn't kind of fit these rules. And kind of what the whole process we went through with her is, we said, just like I kind of described to you, we said, okay, so, one of the big things for you is you're falling into a lot of these binge eating episodes, right? That was one of her struggles. And so a lot of cravings, right? And so really ultimately what she was doing for herself, although on the surface level it seemed like, okay, she felt she had more control, really at the end of the day, she did not have the type of peace, I think, with her relationship with food, that really she ultimately wanted. And so a lot of the work that we did was in helping her to have a better sense of how food was impacting her on a day-to-day basis, right? Regardless of what choice she made. So she ended up bringing in some full-fat dairy, right, in a way that she hadn't before, and she recognized that helped her with some of her digestive issues when she brought in some full-fat yogurt, right? Okay, so great, that was an improvement, right? So she decided she was going to keep that, right? And then she also recognized that, she was going long periods without eating because she couldn't find the perfect vegan food, right?
So like starving herself.
And so her pattern was making her vulnerable to these binge eating episodes. And so for her, right, and this could be different for everyone, for her it did make more sense, even just because of her lifestyle, to be able to say, okay, so I feel like I'm going to try these high quality animal-based proteins that I can prepare ahead of time, I can bring with me, have ready to go. And she did see a huge improvement in, basically we used the Yale food addiction scale, right? We cut her number in half, from when she started working with me to when we got to where she was, because we really did improve blood sugar balance, right? Big times. Helped with some of the digestive stuff, right? Because another piece for her is, although she was really sworn to this vegan way of eating, digestively it was not working for her, right? Every time she ate a bean, right, she couldn't go out of the house for 24 hours, right? So we just spent a lot of time working through connecting those dots, like, okay, this is mentally your ideal, but really what's happening when you eat this way, right? You're binge eating, you're feeling uncomfortable, you're bloated all the time, you're going long periods without eating, right? You don't even like half of these foods, right, that you think you should be eating. So so maybe for someone else, right, they could have resolved a lot of those issues, right, and achieved some of the health outcomes they wanted with a bit more of a strictly plant-based diet. But for her, that just was not the case in that moment. in her life, you know? And so for me, it's really, okay, so here's the science, right? So here's the mechanism. This is what you're experiencing. This is a possibility, you know, that we could get you from here to here. What's your comfort level with that? Is that something we could think about, right? Okay, it's an 8, it's a 10, great, perfect. It's a 5, all right. So why? Right? Why? What's going on there? Maybe let's take a baby step. Let's take a baby step and think. And so, you know, I do, right, give people formatted menus, right, where I say, okay, so yeah, let's do this. So Sunday, let's eat this. Monday, let's do this. But it's done collaboratively, right? It's done in a way that really honors, I think, where someone is at, right? But also where we might want to try to push them a little bit out of their comfort zone. Because I always feel like when it comes to diet, why would you subscribe to a way of eating that's not giving you the health outcomes that you want, right? So people can do whatever they want to, right? And I always honor.
We take that a little too far sometimes, though. We take that a little too far.
Yeah.
I try to convince some of my unhealthy friends or family. I'm like, I don't care if you don't like it. You don't like broccoli sprouts?
Yes.
You don't like avocados?
Yes.
You don't like kale?
Yes.
You're crazy.
Yes.
You'll stay alive. I eat, but I think I'm a bit unusual. I know I'm a bit unusual in the way I eat so many gross things that I don't like eating. But I like that. If they're healthy, it's just the feeling it gives me. I make terrible smoothies. My girlfriend hates my smoothies. She hates them. They're gross. They're disgusting. Like standing there chewing them. They're awful. But the way they make me feel, I'm like, oh my God. And do you run into this with a lot of clients?
So this is the big caveat. And this is why I love the idea behind an experiment, right? Because I'm never going to tell someone, yeah, you've got to stop this, and now you need to switch to eating this way.
People don't like that.
No, never. And neither do I, right? Neither do I. It's understandable. But yeah, I think in order to get someone to make a modification that I feel might be supportive to them, really, people are living in their own bodies, right? And so they are the experts, right, on what the experience is for them. But in order to get someone oftentimes to go from here to there, they have to have a good experience with there. And so by implementing some kind of a short-term experiment, right, maybe it is, okay, so just for this week, you're gonna have a green smoothie every day, right? And this might sound awful to you, this might sound horrible, but this is what we're going to measure, right? We're gonna measure your energy levels, right? How hungry you are, right? Can you go, do you feel like you can concentrate a little bit better on what you're trying to achieve in the morning, right? Then we go through, right? And we say, okay, so let's break this down. Let's break it down. How did that go? When you get someone in the place where they've adapted their behavior, they've had a different outcome, and then they have a positive outcome, then they have that pairing, all of a sudden, right, it becomes much easier for that behavior to become the default, right? Because if you had one of those smoothies and then you felt drained, exhausted, I don't know if you're moody, but women are moody, right?
No, I'm always happy. I always have this dumb happy face. Not moody at all.
So I think ultimately the reason that we do things often have a lot to do with how they make us feel, right? Or what they allow us to accomplish. And so, I know that's often the case with, when you think about, like the principle of sugar addiction, right? Or thinking through that whole dynamic, like that's an example, right? On the other side of a behavior that's often very difficult to break because there's such powerful reinforcement pathways in place, right? And so I think sometimes with some of the healthier behaviors where there's not quite a pronounced response, right? Or maybe you feel better, you have higher energy levels, but it's not the same hit that you might get from eating a brownie, right? Or whatever it is, right? From maybe a high sugar food, right?
What does that do to your brain?
Soda, right?
What does that do to your brain?
We talk about that.
Your brain's like more, yes, more. And it's
there's so many pathways there.
So you're saying a delicious green smoothie, it's not going to have such a profound immediate effect like the brownie, which the brownie's like...
Or soda, right? Like so many people,
soda.
Right? Like that mid-afternoon soda. Someone's like, I drink a soda. And I say, well, okay, what is it about that, right? We've really got to be thoughtful about this, you know, because this isn't just, yeah, okay, the soda is bad, you got to get rid of the soda. Like, what is it doing for you, right? And people are like, oh yeah, it is. It's giving me this immediate lift, right, that I don't otherwise have. And okay, and then think about that. So 30 minutes after, an hour after, then what's happening? Let's walk through this, right? You get that crash. But in the moment, right, people are making that decision because they know what's going to happen, right, in the 5, 10, 15 minutes, right? They know they're exhausted. They know they can't concentrate, right? And so that caffeine, that sugar rush, right, is what they need in the moment. It makes them feel so much better, right? And so I think in order to, but yeah, something like a green smoothie, right? You think, okay, so what is that doing for you? Well, you know, if you make it well, right, it can help to kind of carry you, so it can set your hunger hormones up, right, to be really managed ideally. So, you know, you're kind of telling your body, all right, so I've got enough protein, I've got enough fat on board, right? Making sure you have a nice comprehensively built smoothie. But also if you're using greens, right, or a greens powder or frozen kale or whatever it is, you've also got that really beautiful dose of magnesium, right? And, you know, so you have a bit of a kind of calming effect, right, from that. You might have a bit of iron, right? That just helps to just, yeah, make sure blood is flowing well, right? And so to me, something like a smoothie, you know, helps you build a foundation, right, for making sure that your body is operating on all cylinders so that later on in the day, you're not so depleted, right, that you need that soda, right? You need that soda. So it's kind of setting you up for success. But I think in order to make it a consistent thing, right, something people go to, often it does really benefit people to walk through that process and really think through, okay, so really what is happening here for me? You know, what is happening here for me? Because it's not so immediate or drastic as something like soda might be, right? Unless you take that time to think, okay, like this, I know this is good or intellectually for me. You know, these are the ingredients that are in it. This is the purpose, right, for these ingredients. This is what it's doing for me long term, right? And you kind of can build that behavioral reinforcement that way, right? Just by pairing positive thoughts, beliefs, right? Good energy levels, right? Feeling good, feeling a bit calmer, being able to concentrate with what you had for breakfast in the morning, right? So you can kind of go back to it that way. So yeah, but sugar is really interesting. It's really interesting because it's such a go-to for people, you know?
So what's the deal with, because we can understand the sugar one. I think everyone, I think that's kind of ubiquitous now. Everybody's like, yeah, I know sugar's bad. Yeah, I know it's bad. It's bad. It's bad. Like that's kind of common now. Maybe 20 years ago, it was like, what are you talking about? Like Frosted Flakes and cereal are delicious.
I mean, I still do think that some of the, you know, having kind of feet in both worlds, right? In traditional dietetics, right? And maybe some of the more integrative approaches, there really is a division still, I think, even when it comes to something like cardiovascular disease, right? Where a lot of people are still following this super low fat, high carbohydrate diet, right? Which ends up, right, being pretty rich in refined carbohydrates or even sugar containing foods, right? Even if they're not high sugar containing foods, really a sugar or simple carbohydrate rich diet. And so, yeah, I do think a lot of people recognize that, so sugar is not the greatest choice I can make, but I still think it is in some of those paradigms for approaching disease in a way that I also think will shift dramatically, you know, over the next...
We need a couple generations to flush out all this 1950s, 60s, 70s scientific... propaganda that it's fat that's the problem, it's sugar and bread, eat more of that. We're still trying to wash that out, but it's happening. I see it happening. So I think we can understand everybody be like, okay, sugar's a problem. So what's going on with diet soda? Like, why do people drink so... My brother-in-law, he's 40, dude still drinks 2 cans of Diet Pepsi a day. And I don't, and it's really head scratching because his dad is diabetic and losing his foot and about to die, and I'm like, stop stop with the diet soda. So we know, I can understand normal soda gives you the sugar. What is it about diet stuff that gets people addicted, that they know it's bad for them, but they still go for it?
Yeah, so, you know, with the diet stuff, I think it often is just that sweet hit. Because, so I think there can be a couple different scenarios. So some people are trying to wean themselves off, right? So some people so this is a common scenario, right, that I've come across. So someone is newly diagnosed with diabetes, right? They're like, oh, now there's a big problem, right? Nobody really caught it before and said, okay, you're on this trajectory. Let's address this before you get to the diagnosis, right? But here they are, they have this new diagnosis and they know, okay, so sugar's the first thing that I want to address, right? But I'm drinking 2 sodas a day, you know, so I'm going to go to diet, right? And so for them, it's just a behavioral substitution thing, right? Where they have, okay, so this is close. I feel like it's going to be better for me. Okay, so I'll try to wean off that way. The other is, I think that there still is, you have the caffeine, right? So for people who are, you know, maybe a little more health conscious, right? And think they're making a good choice. In my experience, it's usually an energy management issue where people are feeling super depleted, right? And even that diet soda, often because of the caffeine, right, gives them a lift. But that sweet taste also satisfies something for people. And they think that they're doing themselves, you know, a favor, right? A favor by making that choice. So I feel really mixed about that whole issue, because I can appreciate that people really struggle, you know, with getting off the roller coaster of sugar consumption, right? And my preference is to really shift people toward a high fat, high protein, right, type of approach, because I think that's where you see the most freedom, you know, the most quickly, right? But in order to get there, you have to challenge a lot of the calorie paradigm and all of that. And so that's scary, right, for people to think all of a sudden. So there's a whole lot of work to do there. But yeah, but with artificial sweeteners, I also think this has been pretty recent. So it's not on the radar of a lot of individuals, right? With, I've seen some research done in animal models, maybe you have too, right, where they've given, animals sucralose, right, so Splenda, and have seen changes in the gut microbiome, right, super powerful for influencing weight, insulin resistance, amazing, like every
this
day,
was a
right?
scary, I know of,
yeah,
this was a scary research. This is scary research, what it does to your gut flora.
And so basically what happened is that the gut microbiome, the flora that was there, was shifted more in the direction of a profile that you would see in more of an insulin resistant state. And so there's irony there in that, individuals who are really struggling with blood sugar balance, right, then maybe introducing a compound that's disrupting their microbiome in such a way that it doesn't really ever allow them to get to the kind of optimal flora that they might want for helping to support blood sugar balance, right? Because there are certain strains that are involved in weight metabolism, right? And also in basically your body's ability to regulate blood sugar balance. It's the insulin resistance, right? Making sure your cells can take in glucose when they need to and use it well, And then I think there's always the whole reward pathway issue, because what we do know is that just that super sweet taste, because it's an artificial level of sweetness, right? You don't find that in an apple.
When was the last time you had that, like a accidentally had Splenda or Equal or something like that?
So sweet.
Like my brain right now, without having had it for years probably, I can't remember the last time I even tried any of it. Sweet. I could taste it right now. My tongue is reacting to my memory of it, and like that was gross. Like I'm like, ugh, that's so sweet.
Recently, I grabbed a seltzer, right? Thinking, oh great, just grabbed it, didn't even really look. I took one sip and I'm like,
you know it right away. Yes, it's an accident.
What did they do with this? And they put this artificial sweetener in this.
Sneaky. Sneaky.
Why would you do that? But the truth is, our taste buds are, so if you're eating, what's in the grocery, right? What's available in most of the aisles of the grocery store, right? Our taste buds are just so primed, right, to that sweet taste that, yeah, it's amazing how often it's kind of snuck in because manufacturers feel like, you know, we can get more people to buy this and love this if we just up the ante a little bit with a bit of an artificial sweetener, you know. But it is so sweet that there is some research showing that it can increase cravings, right, for sweet foods later on. Because, so not only, this is interesting, it can confuse your body's ability to connect sweetness to caloric balance, right? And so I don't know if that's been fully developed, that line of research, but it's something that I'm sensitive to and thinking, okay, so if your body knows, right, that this amount of sweetness correlates with this amount of energy, right? But all of a sudden you're taking in these artificial compounds that are so sweet, all of a sudden there's no clear connection there, so your body just doesn't really know what to do, you know, with the sweetness. So
break that down for my dumb brain. This is what I think you just said. So with sugar, you're taking in sugar, your body feels the sweetness, your brain's like, okay, sweet, and you are getting a source of energy. But with the sucralose, the Splenda, whatever it might be, the artificial aspartame, you're getting the sweetness, but you're not getting that same bit of energy that you would from sugar.
Energy balance, exactly.
So your body's like, what
so there
is this?
There is some thought, exactly, that it can be counterproductive to individuals who are struggling with weight management issues, right? Just because your body's just kind of confused about what it's doing with that sweet taste. You know, I've heard it speculated that then connects to some of those just cravings for sweetness, right? Because your body still wants an energy source but hasn't gotten it. But again, you know, I feel like that's probably going to be further explored, you know, in research to come. But yeah, to me, the big concern is really the microbiome stuff, you know, just knowing that, you know, we just need to be, I think, respectful of, you know, what's going on in there. You know,
can you break down,
you know?
I mean, we've tossed it around a bit, but you obviously know microbiome and the gut flora. I know it, but for anybody who's listening or watching, hi. What does that mean? Break that down, the microbiome, the gut flora. What does any of that mean?
Yeah, so big picture is basically that, you know, in our intestines, right? And it should be in your large intestine mostly, right? So down, you know, stomach and down. You have tons and tons and tons of bacteria, fungi, right, that make up this basically collection of good and bad bacteria, right? I say good and bad, but oftentimes it really just is a matter of making sure that you have the right amounts of various bacteria available, right, in your body to be able to carry out a variety of different roles. And so what we know is that although there is no one perfect blend, right, or combination of certain strains of bacteria, right, that has not yet been established, we do know that the standard American diet is very closely associated with low microbial diversity, right? So less types of good bacteria, right? And really a lower diversity overall. So you might have, for instance, if you think about something like lactobacillus, right, is a really common strain in a healthy microbiome. There's many different types, right, of those lactobacilli. Basically, it's like genus, family, it's broken down. But if you go to Burkina Faso, right, and you look at a traditional diet where it's really a ton of root vegetables, right, and maybe they're foraging, right, so they're eating a lot of those plant-based foods, a very high fiber diet with tons of resistant starches, right, that the microbiome is really responsible for breaking down. It's like fuel for the microbiome.
It feeds
right?
your gut,
it feeds
right?
Your gut.
Okay.
You end up with, and it starts in childhood, right? It starts from first feeding, right? Your microbiome is largely established. You can modify it a bit throughout adulthood, but largely established in the first few years of life, right? That's your foundation. And so, when someone's growing up in that environment, they end up having a much wider diversity of just bacteria overall. So basically the paradigm here is that this low diversity and perhaps more of the not so great bacteria, right, compared to the good bacteria, again, seems to be very well associated, closely connected to many of the Western diseases, right? Especially when it comes to low-grade inflammation, right? So thinking about, kind of like joint pain, swelling, even weight management, right, concerns, or, diabetes. There's been some research connecting there, autoimmune diseases, right? Really interesting how many connections there are between your kind of microbial balance, right? How many of different strains of bacteria you have and how diverse, right, overall the populations are. There's a really interesting term that's been coined by a couple of researchers at, it's the Sonnenbergs. Are they at University of California? They're at Stanford. So they talk about microbiota accessible carbohydrates, right? Microbiota accessible carbohydrates, which is a really fancy and kind of a fun term for the carbohydrates that the good bacteria can use as fuel, right? And so what we know about the standard American diet, where really it's based off of, so breakfast cereal, right? Breakfast cereal and low-fat milk. So Lucky Charms, 1% milk, maybe a toaster strudel, right? Then for lunch, maybe it's a sandwich, on white bread, right, with some turkey. And then for dinner, it's pasta, right, with maybe a meatball.
Sounds like an
right?
awful day.
Right? So like this is common. This is common, right? I mean, I know you're cringing. I'm like, how would I have a toaster strudel? But within that pattern there, breakfast, lunch, and dinner, effectively there is no microbiota accessible carbohydrate. So there's very little complex fiber. That's really what it is, right? There's very little complex fiber, very little resistant starch. And so what happens, right, and this is what they talk about, is that your bacteria, your good bacteria, are effectively starved, right? They don't have the fuel that they need to self-regulate and to be able to diversify, right, create more of themselves. So what you can end up with, right, is an environment where the not so good bacteria are more likely to be overrepresented, right? And that's where you get this phenomenon of kind of dysbiosis, right? Or you might be more likely to have, to be prone to perhaps infectious bacteria, right? Versus having a beautiful, robust microbiome full of a diversity of strains, which then can help with communicating even to your brain, right? And thinking about mood, right? And just day-to-day how you feel, how you're doing, so that's kind of microbiome in a nutshell, not just being a clinician and not being in a lab. But I think there's tons of research being done on both the kind of mood food microbiome side, right, which is really interesting, but then also the kind of chronic disease and microbiome connection, because there's clearly a lot to be explored, right, on both sides. And so whenever I'm kind of assessing someone's nutritional intake, that's one of the biggies, right? Thinking about, okay, so it's so simple, but what's your dietary fiber intake look like? And is it coming from fiber 1 bars, right? Or is it coming from jicama, right? Because if we're thinking about,
because it matters.
What's
fiber isn't fiber, right? Like it varies, right?
I think it depends on really your perspective. So my feeling is that if we know in a population, it's kind of like that, I'm using this term loosely, but evolutionary biology, right, type of framework, where you're thinking, okay, so these people have lived this way for thousands and thousands and thousands of years, right? And we know this is what they've gotten, right? They've gotten this beautiful, diverse, rich microbiome, and they have a very low prevalence of chronic disease. So let's maybe go more in that direction, you know, of
there's
what they're
there.
eating versus just saying, oh yeah, we know for sure it's just this one type of fiber. We're going to pull out and isolate and put in, you know, I mean, fiber, I hate to like call them out, but we're just going to put in this nutritional bar or nutritional shake, and this will be enough. This will be enough to make it happen. Because let's face it, nutritional science is just not that advanced, right? It's very difficult, right? To get really good, clean. We have a lot of population-based studies, right? There's just a lot to know still, right, about nutrition as far as kind of case controlled, randomized controlled, right? It's very difficult to break diet down in that way. And so I always feel like if you have good information, you know, about what's worked well, you have a good, for a population, you know, kind of what the mechanism is there. If you have the ability, you know, let's try to shift toward maybe the whole food or whole dietary pattern versus trying to hack our way, you know, to health using isolated compounds, you know, by drinking like the, you know, special fortified water and, you know, the fiber bar and this and that, because I just think at the end of the day, like you're possibly missing out on a lot of what actually is effective there, right? In those dietary patterns. So
but we're dealing with a couple different things there, right?
Yeah.
Like you're saying, nutritional science, like that is making a lot of progress. We're starting to understand like all the stuff you just hit upon.
Yeah.
But to be able to transfer that and convince manufacturers, food manufacturers, the people making these cereals, making these bars, who are making a killing, who are making these sodas, who are making these chips, everything that says,
you got it. Yep.
Convince them to feed people more healthy. They're like, that's not our job. Our job is, and it's the American way. I can eat whatever I want, like you've said. Like this is who I am. This is what I eat. I can do what I want. This is my freedom. Yeah. But one of the most significant things, though, that has helped change my mind over the past couple of years, and feel free to correct me in anything I say. But this is the way I interpret it and the way I remember it, is the importance of the microbiome is that there are more bacterial cells in your digestive tract than there are human cells in your body. Like we are essentially a walking bacteria. And I like to think really evolutionary about this. And because bacteria predates everything. That was one of the first life forms, if not the first life form on Earth, was some sort of bacteria. So I like to think of it, because it's more fun this way, that we're not even human. Like we're basically something bacteria created to help keep it alive. Yes. There's more of that than there are of us. So I feel like the bacteria is driving us. And you have to make that bacteria happy, or else your body vehicle is going to turn into crap. Like you have to take care of your body vehicle. So I kind of feel my mindset, how I've totally adjusted the way I eat the last 4 or 5 years, especially the last 2, is make that bacteria happy. I don't care if it tastes bad on your tongue. I don't care if it's gross. Just make that bacteria happy. And then, like you said something earlier about using vegetarianism or just vegetables as like a reset button. This is something I've experimented the last couple of years. I've gone a week at a time. I just decided, okay, this whole week, no meat. Just go. And this is also like early summer, midsummer, where there's just delicious vegetables everywhere. And I was making killer smoothies. Killer! They were so good. All this local stuff. So I did that for a week. And I was like, wow. And by the end of the week, I was definitely craving meat. I was certainly craving meat. And I was like, this isn't going to be a lifestyle for me. So I was like, I'm missing something. But I still just like, okay, let's see how I feel at the end of the week.
Yes.
And besides craving the meat, I also just felt cognitively happier. I felt everything felt good. I had these boosts of energy. But once I started eating meat again and continuing with the smoothies and just worked in some high quality meat, like you mentioned, I was like, oh my, and still just no bread or anything. It was like I was a new person. It's like, what? Like I felt supercharged. And I actually did a similar thing. So I did that just in a week, a couple times. And then this past December, did something, hashtag Discipline December. And Discipline December involves no sugar, no carbs, no nothing at all. Like every now and again, I'll cheat now and have a bagel because they're delicious. But for Discipline December, it was just vegetables and meat. And so I did it for a full month as opposed to like a couple weeks here and there. But I felt so great during December. And I was like, okay, bacteria, you're in charge. Because, and then, so, of course, during the holidays, I cheat a little bit here and there. Family, if somebody makes you a nice cake or a pie, you got to eat some of it. And for me, that because it's not a typical thing. Yeah. But last week was my birthday. Here's a great example. Birthday. Thank you. So old now. It's awesome. I love getting older. So my girlfriend brought me back home a slice of cake. Just one slice. She knew there was a little chance I would even eat that one slice. So that night, I had just some of the frosting, and I felt my body go, whoa! My brain, and I stood there in the living room with it in my hand before I even sat down. I was like, I don't think you want to sit down with this. Interesting. And within 10 seconds, I started telling her, I was like, I just feel my body just started talking to me, and I felt like I was just like picturing my gut bacteria talking to me, saying, yes, give me more of like the bad stuff. Like, give me more. My brain said, do more. Yes. And I said, my body's talking to me. Yes. And I was like, no, because I like being disciplined. Discipline's fun. I'm sure it's fun for you too. And it's probably a big hurdle to get over with a lot of clients is teaching that discipline. But I went and I put that cake back in the fridge and I threw it away the next day. Yeah. But I felt it. Yeah. I felt that sugar rush, and I felt my body saying, do more of this. And I was like, this is so evil. I'm not listening to you.
So I'm really curious. So when you had that experience of being hypersensitive, right, to that intake of a little bit of frosting, do you feel like previously, before the summer, before December, maybe 2-3 years ago, would you have had that same experience there with that frosting?
No, it wouldn't have been that significant. I would have just eaten and be like, that's good, and it just kept going, and probably maybe had a soda with it or something else sweet, something else. I probably just would have kept going, and I just would have thought nothing of it. But here I am over a week later, and I still remember that from last week and saying, my body is talking to me. Yes. That's the one thing that's been amazing for me the last couple of years is like my body's because I experimented so much. Yes. Like try all these foods, take those out, just do this now, try that, try this, eat these. You start to really get in tune with your body. And at the same time, it's also when I picked up yoga and meditation, so I felt really in tune to this thing. I'm like, all right, I get you, body. I'm starting to listen to you. So, no, several years ago, when it was totally the norm for me, pasta twice a week, 3 times a week, why not? A couple pounds a week, why not? Soda occasionally. Soda was the first thing I started getting rid of probably like 6-7 years ago. And but typically it would be pasta, some ice cream, some like very standard things like you hit upon, like that breakfast, that lunch, that dinner.
Yeah, what's all over the place.
And then throw in a dessert. We didn't even mention that typical thing is going to probably have a dessert, some cookies, a donut, some soda. But yes, now that I'm certainly a different eating habit, I feel like a different person, and that was such a pronounced thing a week ago. It was like 9:30 at night, 10:30 at night, whatever it was. And I just ate that and I was like, holy crap. Like it wasn't just pleasure. Like there was some pleasure. It was like something was screaming at me saying, more, more. And just knowing and recognizing that, knowing what that sound was, it made it's a game for me. I think it's probably a game for you too. I want to win this game. I'm not going to let you win. I'm going to let the good guys win. I'm not going to let the bad bacteria win. Because that is something I've heard. Please correct me whenever. The bad bacteria in your stomach, the more sugar you feed your body, the more that bad stuff is craving it. Like we think we're craving it. We think our tongues are craving it. We think our brain's craving it. But is it the bacteria that's craving that sugar?
Yeah, it is. It is some. It is definitely some, because there's been some brain imaging research done where they've looked at the parts of the brain that light up with sugar consumption, right? Lo and behold, right? similar reward pathways as with cocaine use. Cocaine use. So like, no wonder, right? People have a hard time getting off this. But yeah, there's actually and I wish I could remember exactly what the strain in the genus was, but it's a Clostridia strain that when it's overrepresented, right, in your body, pretty common knowledge, right? Pretty well accepted that is a strain that will crave, right, and kind of ask for.
I woke that thing up.
Sugar,
that thing was sleeping. It was taking a nice long nap, or it was getting like bullied by the good, healthy bacteria. No, you stay in your room. Nobody likes you. Nobody wants to hang out with you. You're ugly and stupid and dumb. And then I gave it some sugar, and it woke up and it said, "Give me more."
Hello. Yes, hello. Yeah, so that is so interesting because the microbiome can shift day to day, right, week to week, depending on what you're encouraging and what you're fueling, right? So it's pretty astounding, right? I love that way of thinking about, right? Thinking about, okay, so why am I going to eat this fermented food or this prebiotic-rich food or whatever? Not just because it's healthy, right? Because it's feeding, it's encouraging the growth of bacteria that are going to send the right messages, right, to my body, to my brain, right, keep me doing what I want to do. Yeah, I mean, the count, and I know the estimate kind of varies, but it's like 10 to 1, right, with bacteria that are microbiome bacteria.
That's wacky.
And then our own. It is wild. It is wild. It's like, what a new way, right, to think about. Yeah.
Yourself. Just look at yourself. It's like, oh, all this other stuff, this doesn't really control. Yeah. This isn't what you think you are craving it. Like you as a person are craving it, but you're not. It's this little vehicle you're walking around in, and the stuff inside that vehicle that are dictating. And it's like, I find it as a way of, like, I mean, we basically were using that, alluding to it being a metaphor. Like, this stuff was talking to you. Yes. Like, I feel like it really is talking to you. Like, in a deep, no, not even metaphysical. Probably a real way. It feels like it's screaming and saying, it's by rewards, right? By affecting the way you feel.
Right.
You make that bacteria happy, it makes your body feel good. You make it mad, it's probably going to make inflammation, create inflammation.
Right, create inflammation, absolutely.
And say, that's bad, you shouldn't be doing that. I don't want that.
Yep. And then when you have that low-grade chronic inflammation, well, no wonder you feel exhausted all the time, moody all the time, right? You're depressed, you're anxious, right? It's a valid consideration, right? You've got to think, okay, so how is your microbiome affecting? There's it's well known now that there's a whole vagus nerve, right, that goes all the way. So there's an enteric nervous system that lines your intestine, right? So you think of your nervous system as just sensing, right? So this enteric, this internal nervous system in your gut lining, but then there's also a vagus nerve, right, that goes from your head, from your brain, down to your stomach, right? And even a little bit lower, right? Along the length of your intestine. And so there's messages that are sent, right? Mostly from your gut to your brain. But even like some people will notice, and this may have happened, to you, it certainly happened to me, if I'm going to give a talk, right? Or really preparing for something, I'm on the verge of something that I'm nervous about, right? I feel it in my stomach. Right? Feel it in my stomach. So there is some of that, right? Brain to gut, and that's where some of the, stress management can help with IBS, all of that. But a lot of those messages are being sent from gut to brain, right? There's even, it's so fascinating, there's even some bacteria that can produce things like GABA, right?
Don't know GABA.
GABA or serotonin. It's
GABA?
GABA,
okay.
Yep, aminobutyric acid, right? G-aminobutyric acid. So that's kind of, I think of it as, this is really unscientific, but I think of it as the Zen neurotransmitter, right? People will take supplemental GABA.
Okay.
And they're feeling like they just need to kind of calm down to help with anxiety, right? But lo and behold, right? Maybe you don't really have those bacteria in your gut that are well-fed, well-nourished, that could produce GABA for you, right? Produced gut before you. A lot of the serotonin, have you heard this, is produced in your gut? Like 60 to 70%.
What?
Of internal serotonin is produced in your gut. No, I did not know this. Got it, yeah, PubMed it and type it in, and amazing. And it just has to do with, like, you have to have a healthy microbiome to be able to produce those neurotransmitters, right? That can really set you up to experience a nice, healthy, well-regulated mood state, you know? And so it's not the whole picture, right? There's a whole lot that goes into people's experience, you know, around depression, anxiety. It's not all food, it's not all nutrition. But if we're thinking in terms of kind of root causes, what can we do or what can we modify? Well, you know, one beneficial shift is to go from a Pop-Tart to a cream smoothie. Not just because it's healthier, right? But because it's a whole other set of instructions, right? For your body, for your genes, you know, for your microbiome. And then that feeds into, right? So how everything is operating, you know, day to day. So it's just so powerful, you know. I know in traditional Chinese medicine, they really treat the gut as the center of everything, right? And so that's often the first place that, you know, integrative practitioners certainly will go. You know, I've heard it said many times, you know, through different trainings, etc. If you don't know where to start, even if there's no gut symptoms, start with the gut. Because you can see so many improvements, right, happen when you've got healthy gut lining and when you just work on shifting, like you're saying, some of the microbes that are there and available, right, by making sure you're feeding, right, maybe getting rid of some of the bad guys, right, if there's overgrowth there, and encouraging growth of those beneficial species, bifidobacterium and the lactobacillus, right, of all the different strains there. So
you mentioned Massachusetts a couple times. We go to a couple farms out there because I could get raw milk. I get raw milk. Yeah. I love raw milk. Is that as good for me as I think it is? Because I love it.
So what's been your experience with it?
We talk about a little lactose intolerance. I certainly probably have some say with just drinking normal homogenized pasteurized store-bought milk, even if it's good, like New York. Say like Stewart's makes pretty good milk. They're pretty good milk. Compared to, I lived in Florida for 10 years and it was always just bleh. I was always store-bought. So New York, I'm like, ooh, Stewart's got some pretty good milk. And Bat and Kill Creamery, that's pretty good milk too. Right. But then I discovered that there's real farms out here, real dairy farms. We used to live up in St. Lawrence County and get some like real farmland, like real straight from the udder, like raw milk. I don't even know if it was processed. I think she just put it in and put it into the jar and gave it to me. What I realized almost immediately, besides the taste, and it would taste like grass. Yes. I'm like, this tastes like grass. I'm tasting nutrients. So it would just, my taste bud, I would get a little bit like energized and a little bit jacked up, and my senses would be like smelling that. This smells different. It looks different. It tastes different in my mouth. And then later on, I wouldn't have any like gassy problems. And whereas even with Stewart's milk, any kind of pasteurized milk, I feel I have some gassy problems. And my girlfriend's on a whole different planet with that. She's like, I'm not touching that milk. But raw milk she will mess with. She's like, I don't feel specifically even beyond raw cow's milk is I can't wait for the farmer's market to open up here. There's a guy who sells goat's milk. Discovered goat's milk last year. I haven't had that. Oh my god. It's the best milk I've ever had.
So I think you brought up a really, really interesting point in that. So raw milk to me, like, I think there's a lot of caveats with it, right? Like I wouldn't recommend it for a baby, right? I wouldn't recommend it for someone who's neutropenic, right? Who just went through, cancer treatment, right? Who's really immunocompromised, right? So I think you just have to be smart, right, about your source, right? Who you're buying it from, what they're doing, how they're feeding. But there certainly are more enzymes, right, available in the milk. So it totally makes sense, right? A little bit easier to digest. But I think maybe the most valuable thing really has to do with that being grass-fed, right? That fatty acid composition, right? That's just so much more health supportive, than perhaps something that was just more industrial, right? Just cows who are going out and grazing. Dairy is such a big issue, and big topic. So I think people are on all different spectrums, with just, tolerance to, right? Different types of milk, the whole digestive piece, the whole inflammation piece. When I do food sensitivity testing, and everybody's different, but the things I see come back most frequently is cow's milk. So like things that are super high, like off the chart. Cow's milk and wheat. Cow's milk and wheat are the two big things. So those are the things that we end up pulling out most often, For people who tolerate well, I always feel like the things that matter most are, okay, so, can you get it grass-fed, right? Because if you can get it grass-fed, go for whole milk, right? If it's pastured, if you know that you're getting really good doses of basically the it's like a conjugated linoleic acid, the CLA. Have you heard about that? Like,
not from you.
For your metabolism. Wonderful for metabolism. And it's really only found, right, in those grass-fed animal, right? Same thing in like a grass-fed beef, right? The fatty acid profile is so much different than what you would get if you just go and buy, right, conventionally raised, beef. So I think in that way, having milk from a farm, right, where you know how it's raised, right, what the cows are eating, there's benefit just in that, right, aside from the raw or the not raw, but for digestively, I have heard that a number of times that people feel like, yeah, they just don't have the same gas bloating, right? They feel much more comfortable digestively after drinking raw milk, So
that's what's in my coffee.
I only okay.
And it makes coffee taste so much more delicious because of that fat, that extra super fat. My sugar sources, going back, because I crap on sugar all day, but my sugar sources, it's real maple syrup. I started putting real maple syrup in my coffee 2-3 years ago. And that and raw honey are my main sugar sources, and I still try to keep I'm probably still like 20 grams or less a day of sugar, but the raw milk and the real maple syrup, like the real thick dark mapley maple syrup,
good stuff.
That's why sometimes I drink 3 coffees a day. So it's kind of my
for the maple,
because of that. What is See, I have that concern about me. Maybe I need to have an appointment with you at some point. If I am consuming, I want to know if dairy is a problem for me, because I have so much. I drink a fair amount of raw milk. I eat a lot of good local cheese, sheep's milk or goat's milk or cow's milk cheese. And I eat a lot of full-fat yogurts, like your Feo, and there's the Farmer's Market's our go-to for their yogurt as well. And I'd love to control inflammation. I'm like, okay, is this affecting me? Because it doesn't affect my stomach, and it makes me feel good, and I need energy, and it's right there, ready to go. It seems to work, but I want to know if it's not ideal for me. How many people do you find? You said that's the number one thing, cow's milk, right?
Right. Well, when you think about it, really the people that I'm doing food sensitivity testing on usually have a lot of digestive stuff going on. Like usually when someone's ready, they're at that point.
Okay.
Right? They're like, okay, like just cannot get this under control. Let's do this food sensitivity testing. My first go-to for anyone who hasn't done this is always just an elimination type period, right? An elimination diet, which can be done many different ways, but it's just pulling it out, keeping it out for 3 weeks, right? And then putting it back in. And just, you have to know what you're looking for, right? But it sounds like for you, you've been through that and you've experienced, right, a before and after, right, in a way that, I think elimination diets are really primed for, right? It's just when an elimination diet doesn't give you, right, the answers that you want or need, right? Or perhaps you've eliminated so much from your diet, right? Which happens with some people. They're like, oh, well, I'll go autoimmune paleo, and then I'll pull out gluten and dairy, and then I'll stop eating these nuts because I can't digest them, and I can't do grains now because those are, and all of a sudden they're living on, like protein powder, right?
Yeah.
And they're like, this isn't working, right? Then maybe that's where, right, you're thinking, right, those more extreme cases, food sensitivity testing. But I would say probably, goat's milk usually comes back much less reactive, right, than cow's milk does. So that's interesting to me, right? I just know what I see. But cow's milk, I would say probably in 75% of cases, but again, a lot of them being primarily digestive, But yeah, I do think there's a role for good quality dairy for a lot of people because, some of the, again, kind of back to some of the research, some of the probiotic type research, right, has been done with yogurt. And again, even looking at reductions in anxiety, right? Before and after consumption, and brain imaging, right? How things have maybe shifted or changed. Absolutely, I think people can have a really good relationship, with high quality, right? High quality, well-sourced dairy products. It's just for people who, I think it's just a tool, like, pulling it out, putting it back in can be a tool you can use to try to figure out if it's playing into specific concerns you might have. But I think people, really do find oftentimes it's a really valuable source of calcium D, iodine, right? Phosphorus. And so, nutritionally, it can be pretty valuable, right? It can be really valuable. I have the same experience as you, where if I have a really good, whole fat yogurt in the morning, right, with some berries or whatever, I feel fantastic. I feel fantastic. And it's not just physically, but mood, right? I really notice, like, I have a good response to it. But not everyone has, right? Not everyone has that experience.
That's the thing. I would like to see some of the science and numbers on it, because I'm aware that I could be willfully ignorant or ignoring the fact that maybe my body doesn't feel that good about this. Maybe it's just so delicious. The stuff tastes so good. And I've cut out things that I used to feel were delicious, like pastas and pizzas and ice cream and that. I'm like, this stuff is whole milk, raw milk is so delicious. Full fat yogurt is so delicious. Full fat cheeses, raw cheeses are so delicious. And I'm like, but am I being ignorant about it? Is it really not helping me? So that is something we might be talking about. But you've hit upon this a couple times, and this is something that is personally significant to me. What is your experience with nutrition and depression / anxiety?
Okay, so I'm gonna lay this out because it's just incredible. You talk about a paradigm shift, right, in a big way. Last summer, in Washington D.C., right, went to sounds super fancy, the first international meeting, right, for the ISNPR, which is the International Society for Nutritional Psychiatry Research. Did you know there was such a thing? International Society.
Anytime something starts with International Society, I automatically think like conspiracy theory, though. I'm like, who's doing that? Who's behind that?
This is legit. So the woman who runs this thing, so just to say, this last summer was the first time there was ever a conference that was convened, right, around, at this scale, right, around this topic, right, around, okay, so how is what we're eating impacting a lot of these neuropsychiatric concerns and brain health, right, in general, right? How is it influencing? The woman who's the president of the ISNPR is an Australian researcher. She's a PhD, and she is the lead author on a trial called the SMILES trial, which if you look it up, you can just Google it. But basically, this trial was recently completed. I think it was 2015, 2016. So, a little bit back, but not too far off, where individuals were given a modified Mediterranean diet, right? Versus which is very rich in nuts, olive oil, right? Little bit of dairy, right? Some meats, but, beans, right? Tons of plants, right? Tons of plants. Good quality, fat sources, very low in sugar, right? That was one of the really primary things. They really scaled back on sugar intake. The comparison group in this trial was just a social support group where they thought, okay, these individuals who are struggling, they had to meet certain scoring criteria for anxiety and depression, right? Using the Hamilton Depression Scoring Scale. And the hospital anxiety and stress scale. And so anyway, these individuals were close at baseline, social support versus this modified Mediterranean diet with one-on-one counseling with a dietitian, right, who was trained in the diet and protocol and helping people to be successful, right? So it wasn't just, oh yeah, do your best, right? But it was, okay, let's sit down, this is what we're doing, what are we eating, breakfast, lunch, and dinner, great. The results were extraordinary. When they came back, the whole trial was 12 weeks, it was about 3 months. And basically these people saw these significant, right, statistically significant, but also clinically significant drops in both the depression and anxiety scores in this modified Mediterranean diet group in a way that just the social support did not provide. And so, you know, effectively, this is kind of background, you know, for a lot of what was discussed at this conference, right? This ISNPR conference. So a lot of what they were talking, and it was a lot of kind of researchers, clinicians. Dr. Drew Ramsey was there, who's a psychiatrist in New York City who does a lot of brain food type work. He actually has published a couple of cookbooks. He's such a neat guy, you know. Eat Complete is one of his books. And he has a course called Eat to Beat Depression, right? So he was there, for example. Professor Jacka, who's this researcher who did the SMILES trial, was there. There's a gentleman from the NIH who's been doing omega-3 research since the 60s, right? He's really been the guy who's been responsible for a lot of the research around omega-3s and depression, right? And just kind of brain health in general and how it all works, what the mechanisms are. And so, yeah, this was really just a gathering point, you know, for people to kind of touch base about what we know and what is yet to be known, right? And so I would say that the really big topics that were there were things like, okay, so dietary patterns, right? Just recognizing that we can only get so far if we continue to think about nutrition in terms of this vitamin, this supplement, right? This, like, in order to really effectively address, right, mood concerns, you know, just thinking in terms of nutrition and mechanisms, again, acknowledging, right, people struggle for many reasons, right, with mood, depression, anxiety, and it's, you know, acknowledging, right, that a lot of that is very difficult and deep stuff that has nothing to do with nutrition, right, but you know, but for the people for whom their diet is playing a role, right, it really does seem to be the big picture that matters the most, you know, because what came out consistently was, okay, so we're doing these trials with omega-3s, we're doing these trials with B12, right? We're doing these trials with methylated vitamins in these special forms, right? You know, we're tracking, you know, specifically kind of this intervention, but the best results have been seen when you have a lot of those different components tackled at once, as was done with the SMILES trial, right? Where it was not just, oh, you give someone an omega-3 supplement, but they're still eating their Pop-Tarts and their pasta and their ice cream, right?
I like how you keep bringing up Pop-Tarts.
Right? I just, you know, I guess they're good, because I don't eat them, that's why I can be so...
Yeah, you could crap on them. Do you know that they're Pop-Tarts, when there's a hurricane coming, like in Florida or Texas or anywhere, okay, Pop-Tarts are the #1 seller at Walmart. They sell out of their Pop-Tarts. Because you don't need electricity or anything. Like, they assume the power is going to go out and whatever. People demolish the Pop-Tart aisle. Eat them. So whenever there's a hurricane coming down the road, Walmart just orders all this extra Pop-Tarts.
Puts them in their front display there, right?
Yeah.
Their front display.
So there, yeah, but we could keep crapping on Pop-Tart. But that's another thing, like, I haven't had in forever, but I know my brain remembers what it tastes like.
Your brain remembers what it tastes like, yeah. But I think kind of the, you know, the big picture and what came through consistently with everyone who was talking is that you can't necessarily expect great results if you just take an isolated compound, right, like fiber, omega-3s, whatever it is, and put it on top or include it in a diet that foundationally is creating low-grade inflammation, right, feeding the bad guys in your gut, right, is not sending positive messages, right, up and down the vagus nerve. And so really, in clinical work, I think it just always comes back to, okay, so let's think about, so what's your history been? You know, what's your lifestyle been? You know, what are your vital signs? What are your labs? What is your supporting clinical data telling us? What are your nutritional habits like, right? So, you know, where perhaps are you not absorbing things well? Do you have, you know, a condition like Crohn's, right? Or celiac, where you really just are predisposed, right? Not able to absorb nutrients as well, right? So regardless of how much you're eating, right, we have an additional challenge there, right? Are there certain things that you're avoiding, right? You don't like fish, so you have not had, you know, a long chain DHA for 15 years,
You're talking about someone,
right?
when you saying that,
right?
I'm thinking of a friend that I know that's been over 20 years since he's had fish.
Yeah.
He just won't eat fish.
Yeah. And thinking in terms of, okay, so, what kind of support do you have, right, to kind of make changes happen? Where are you at with stages of change in your life? And how can we approach this as comprehensively as possible, right? Instead of just thinking, oh yeah, there's some good research about omega-3 and depression, which there absolutely is, right? So if that's where somebody's at, right, that's all they'll do, right? They'll just take an omega-3 supplement or take a magnesium supplement. Good. Let's start there. Let's start there and do that. But yeah, I just think that you see much better results when you can address inflammation, blood sugar balance, right? The gut microbiome, meal timing, in a way that works well with someone's preferences, their abilities, right? And just kind of where they're at, with their goals and their health concerns and all of that. So I guess just to say that, when it comes to nutrition, anxiety, mood, depression, the story is being told. And there's much more to know, but some really good resources for people. Really one of my favorites is Drew Ramsey, right? He was just on Good Morning America just about a week and a half ago, right? Talking about olive oil, and talking about how it can decrease subjective feelings of depression. Like there's been literature, right, showing that it's part of that whole Mediterranean diet,
due to mostly to the omega-3s.
Well, having to do somewhat with the inflammation, right? And somewhat with the fatty acid profile. Olive oil is really rich in oleic acid, and that's really the big bioactive versus omega-3. Like you would get some of the plant-based omega-3 from a flaxseed oil, right? Or from flaxseed or chia. But really in olive oil, it's more of a monounsaturated fat. But it's not just the fat, right? It's also the bioactive compounds. So oleic acid is one of the compounds that's really helps to downregulate inflammation, to manage inflammation overall, So that seems to be where some of the just feel-good benefit comes from, its ability to help regulate some of those pathways.
Does it matter if you heat up the olive oil or not? If it's hot, say if you use it to cook, I use olive oil to cook all the time versus raw olive oil. Does it matter? Does that affect the profile?
Yeah, that's a good question. There is some oxidation that happens, if you're cooking. So maybe this isn't maybe the most precise way to think of it, but there is a smoke point for every oil, right, that you may have heard of. And I mean, the easiest way to describe this is if you go to roast vegetables at 500 and you've done it with olive oil, right, like an extra virgin olive oil, when you open up that oven, it's like you have to call the fire department, right? Because it's just smoke, right? So you've gone past that oil's smoke point, right? The point at which it will start to oxidize, right? Or become right at its worst, become rancid, right? But to oxidize, to change form. And so my preference is always to choose oils for whatever I'm doing, right, that I can keep below their smoke point. And so usually for with olive oil, I think it makes the most sense, like if you have a really good high quality olive oil, to use it to drizzle, right, for salad dressings, and maybe for low heat, like for braising, right, if you're braising a stew or something like that, right, I think that works really beautifully. But some of the, for higher heat cooking, like avocado oil is a really good one. Yes. Yeah, because that goes up to, it's like don't quote me on this, but like a 430.
Oh, I'll quote you. How about I quote the bottles I have at home?
Okay, so
my olive oil at home. My olive oil at home says smoke point of 350.
Beautiful.
And my avocado oil says 500.
500. Okay.
Yeah. But 500 is a little bit too round and a little bit too perfect, right? So it's probably more 430.
I don't remember 500, but it could be.
It's a big. I'm sure they put it on there for market. Who's gonna say we can't?
But it is, it's somewhere in the 4. I feel like I've seen 430, 450, 460 in that range for avocado oil, and it does have to do a bit with really how processed the oil is, right? And so as they change forms through processing, sometimes they can become a little more stable, so it can handle higher heats, But yeah, I mean, I think kind of the whole idea around integrity of oils is it's hard to connect it directly to, okay, so you eat olive oil and it's smoked a little bit and then you have this happen. I don't have that direct connection in my mind. I think it's more just it just makes good sense, to make sure you're keeping your oils in their their healthy, non-oxidized form, right? Just in general.
I'm so glad we talked about smoke points. I'm so glad you brought that up, because I wasn't sure exactly what it meant.
Yeah,
and you just explained it really well.
Yeah.
Good.
Yeah.
Good. You must have channeled my mind.
That, right?
Yeah, I've seen that, and I'm like, I should probably look that up. But I had not looked it up.
Yes.
All right. So back to this conference. What was the most significant thing you learned?
Yeah. Oh gosh.
Or trials or something. This is something. While you're thinking on that, I'll just give you my interest in this on a personal level.
Yeah.
I'm almost a case study. I consider myself my own case study.
Yes.
Because really about 2-3 years ago when I really started eating healthy, it was primarily, especially 2 years ago, I started training for my friend and I were going to do a cross-country bicycle ride. And we had done a bunch of smaller ones like Washington, D.C. to Pittsburgh. We've done that several times, across the state of Florida, a bunch of that. So we're like, okay, let's just do one big one across the whole country.
That's
so
amazing.
Started training for a couple months, and my whole diet changed. I was like, okay, I got to get down. I got really nerdy about it. Like I was all in.
Yeah.
And so I was like, okay, what's the right size to be? Like, so I looked up the average size of the people doing a Tour de France. So I was like, okay, I got like 15 pounds to lose. I'm the right height, got to lose like 15 pounds. And I was like, okay, let's start losing weight. Let's really cut out the sugar, really cut out this. Let's just really dive deep into these smoothies and really get these micronutrients. And the more I learned and learned and learned, I'm like, whoa. And the more I felt and the more I would do it. I did it initially just for training. And the side effect, which actually turned out to be the primary effect, was like, oh my God, it's like my brain's reprogrammed. Because apparently, I mean, I say apparently because I knew I had depression, but I didn't really. The more I get away from it now, I'm like, whoa, who was that person? It extended beyond 20 years straight of just like, what? And like really bad. And I knew it was bad. And I would try to go see a psychiatrist or something. And within 10 minutes of talking, like, here, take this pill. And I would take a pill for 2 days. And I'm like, nope, not doing that. This isn't the answer. There's got to be a better answer. So the side effect from all that training, which turns out I couldn't ride the bike anyways. I injured myself.
Wow.
So
after all that.
But that's not even. I barely even care that I couldn't ride my bike cross country. I do miss out that he did it on his own, little bastard. But so I miss out on that. But the thing I really take away is like, oh, it's reprogrammed my brain. I thought I was like training for my body. And the more I ate, the healthier the other stuff I started cutting out, like completely cutting out pasta, cutting out the breads, and just focusing on these 14 to 18 ingredient smoothies, getting all these micronutrients in me, and all this local delicious stuff, and just putting it in the smoothie. Buying all these food from the Amish farms and putting them in these smoothies. It took me about 6 months before I said it out loud to my girlfriend, and I said, this is weird to say out loud, but I've been noticing the last 6 months, I have not been depressed for a single day. Like, not a single day. Like, all those thoughts, like, throughout those 20 plus years, from the time I was 13 to at least 33, 34, I was like, I would have breaks in between. Be like, okay, I'm not sad for like 3 days or a week or 2 weeks. And then it would inevitably always come back. Whatever, like, that anxiety and the, and I realized after 6 months of eating properly, like really training, that I was like, it's gone. Like, that hasn't come back. And I was like, is this what normal people feel like? Like, this is crazy. So for that, I'm like, I've been since that realization that, oh, it's because of what I was eating. It has to be. I've been so hardcore into eating right. And like, that's just who I am now.
And that's been a huge motivator.
Yeah. And so when I talk to other friends and family that I know are depressed or overweight or just like not so energetic, who have these health problems, people that you talk to every day, I'm like yelling at them. I'm like, it will change your life. You will become a different person, and you will be shocked at how different you are. Like, I'm not even that same person now anymore. The more, like I said, the further I get away from it, so the more I'm like, oh, I gotta talk to someone like Sarah. Like, I want. What else does she know? Like, in my own way, I was like my own scientific study, because I didn't want to take antidepressants. I didn't want to go all that stuff. I was like, there's got to be a real long-term solution. Like, it can't be just taking a pill forever. Like, it's got to be something deeper than that. And for me, I won't give it 100% to food because I've changed other things too. I started just reprogramming my brain in many ways. Like just started reading a book a week, like 50 something books a year, and yoga and meditation. Yes, so I was doing a bunch of stuff for my brain, but the food was the first one that I was like, oh my God, this has been it this whole time. Because I mentioned how, typically eating pasta maybe 3 times a week, maybe 4 times a week. Maybe I'd make 2 pounds of pasta and eat that every day, and then have some soda. And that was, I'd have a hoagie. Yeah. And that was just poison. Yeah. It was poison. I look at that stuff now and I'm like, I can't go back. I'll never go back to that. So that when I have these little cheats, these little cheat meals, like pizza 4 times a year, pasta a few times a year, I'm like, that's what this is. Like the fact that I could count it on one hand. But it's been so significant to me. So I try to preach it to other people, like friends and family. I'm like, just don't be afraid to change. It is significant. So yeah, this is actually the first time I'm ever really telling a stranger beyond my girlfriend and a couple friends that I'm like, dude, it will change your life. But I wish I would International Society of something or other psychology. I would love to go there.
Research,
I would love to hear that kind of stuff.
Gosh, so they have a website set up. If you just Google ISMPR, right, Felice Jacka, they have a page on their society site that's really just, okay, so study after study after study after study after study, right? Schizophrenia, omega-3 and depression, the SMILES trial, right? Long list of hyperlinks. People can just click on, right, to explore and just kind of see what's out there. But, as you were talking, I was thinking about, a couple of things that came up that were really impactful or new for me. And in one area they really delved into was kind of the biochemistry, around even just serotonin synthesis. This is so fascinating to me. It's so fascinating to me because I don't knock antidepressants because I feel like, it's not my scope. Also I'm like, people are like, should I go off this medication? I'm like, don't ask me that. You do, right? You manage that otherwise. I cannot tell you. I cannot advise you that way. But, and I think they're helpful to some people, especially with really severe depression, right? Like cannot get out of bed, etc. But I do think also that in order to be intelligent about our eating decisions, we have to think, how can I support this normal healthy function, right? Using the available knowledge, right, that we have. And so what we do know is that serotonin synthesis, not only is a lot of it made in our guts, right? So gut health matters, but also zinc, right? Magnesium, B6 are critical cofactors, right, to get serotonin pushed along its pathway. So you start with, when you think about tryptophan, right, like everybody thinks turkey and tryptophan, right? Tryptophan is just an amino acid, right? It's converted to a couple different things, but one is 5-HTP, right, which you've probably seen in supplement form, right? People will take that to kind of bypass some of the conversion, which also can be genetic, right? Can be genetic. People can be a little sluggish there. But basically your body takes 5-HTP and can turn it into serotonin. But in order for that whole pathway to run smoothly, you have to have, just as an example, magnesium, zinc, B6 on board. And so just as an example, right, let's talk about magnesium, right? It's my favorite.
It is. It's become one of my favorites.
I love it.
Green leaves, right? That helps?
Green leaf is big time. Yeah, one of the best sources. And I supplement because I just feel the difference. I feel the difference. So let's think magnesium. So we know that there are great sources, right? Dark, green leafy vegetables, nuts, seeds, perfect, wonderful, pumpkin seeds. We also know that soils are depleted, right, of magnesium compared to what they used to be. We also know that stress, right, high amounts of physical activity and high sugar diets deplete. They basically cause your body to use up more magnesium, right? And so your needs become higher. So when you think about the standard, so just case in point, going back to what you're talking about, bringing a mechanism into it, if someone you're thinking of, right, might wake up and just have a breakfast that's light refined, right? You're just thinking really in terms of what most people eat. Maybe it's a piece of toast, right? No magnesium there, right? Then it's the sandwich, or maybe it's chicken noodle soup, right? no magnesium there, right? Not really, right? So people can go through their days, right, thinking, oh, I'll have a little, I'll have a garden salad, I'll have a side salad, thinking, oh yeah, that's my healthy, that's my vegetable. Well, if it's iceberg lettuce, guess what? Like, you really did not get, there's not a lot of magnesium there either. So these people are eating maybe a really high sugar diet, right, which is depleting magnesium. They're not getting magnesium in through their diets, right? So I just think to myself, how in the world could someone possibly be pushing their bodies through this conversion from tryptophan to serotonin in a productive way consistently if they don't have the basic availability of a cofat, right, of magnesium? And more Americans than not have suboptimal magnesium status, right? You can't see it in your blood, right? It's like 1% is in your blood. Most of it is just intracellular. And so it's not something that people's doctors are telling them.
No, we don't talk about that. And isn't that the problem with doctors too, is it's not even a problem with doctors. They don't have enough time to know this. You go see your standard... Nobody in ER is going to talk to you about health, nutrition, magnesium levels.
It's not the way your system is set up.
Family doctor, there's no time. They got 6 or 7 minutes they're supposed to give to each patient, and good luck if they know. What was the average doctor has 4 hours or 5 hours of nutrition during their collegiate career. Like that's it. They don't know anything about nutrition, let alone, especially if they've gone to school 20 years ago. Like, what do they know about today's? So that's where someone like you is hyper valuable. Hyper valuable. Super valuable.
But really, I think there is a lot of opportunity in many cases to just take nutrition to the next level, even if it's just creating support around exactly what you've done, right? That self-experimentation, because you've seen so many positive shifts and changes, right? By just being really attentive to what's happening and being open, right? Being open to experiencing those things. What I find quite a bit is that people at the beginning of a journey, they really have no idea what's going on with their bodies. They just know they don't feel good, right? But they don't have any idea where the information is coming from, And so what's most rewarding, right, about kind of doing this integrative nutrition type of work is getting someone to the other side and having them say, okay, I'm eating better than ever before, and I can finally hear what my body's telling me. It's like, and all of a sudden they're telling me, yeah, Sarah, I tried this, right, in this dose, and I noticed this response. But, if I have this, I'm okay. I'm okay if I have this amount of it, and all of it. And it's, it's been this whole process, right, to get them to that point. But, at the end of it, when I think of it as like clearing out the noise, right? When you pull out a lot of the not so good stuff through structured elimination, whether it's testing or whether it's just, right, experimenting, right? Bringing in some of the good stuff, you can clear out a lot of the, I think of it as confusion, right? A lot of the messages that are just like the low rate inflammation and the blood sugar swings, right? And the cravings, right? Once you can get past all that, right, all of a sudden you just have a whole new set of information to work with that you can then design your diet off of, but I think unfortunately, just because of what we have available to us, right, unless we're very intentional, a lot of people just feel badly all the time, right? And they often don't even think that nutrition could have anything. And
they don't realize that they feel bad, because that's just how they always feel.
That's a good
right?
point too.
Like I knew I felt bad, but I didn't know what was getting me there really. But I think that people, if you're always just here, like I have one friend who actually started for years. I've been getting on him, and he had a kind of revelation. He had a friend come over who was diabetic, and his friend did his own finger prick and was like, oh, okay, I gotta take some of my insulin, whatever. And he's like, yo, let me try that. And he pricked his finger. It was disturbingly high blood sugar. Like, I think he cracked 400 or it was bad.
Gosh.
It was really bad.
So what did he do?
He started he called me. He was like, all right, man, I'm scared. He's like,
yeah, 400 is pretty high.
Yeah, he's like, no, but his buddy, I was like, so I'm a very honest and open person, and eat with strangers and people that are best friends. But him being my best friend, I could really lay into him. And he's like, yeah, it was like 420 something or whatever. I'm like, dude, like I had just had all this work done like a few weeks before. My blood sugar was like, I don't know, 91 or something like that. And I was like, all right, that's fine. Sometimes it's 70, whatever. I was like, that's fine.
Sure.
So I was like, dude, 400. I'm not even sure that registers. I went online and it was like, go to the ER. And he's like, what? Really? And I was like, he's like, yeah, but my friend just said, you know, just start eating a little bit better and you'll be fine. I'm like, no, he's lying to you. You are almost dying. Dude, you are almost, your body is barely hanging on right now. And this is the same dude who has never eaten fish in 20 years. He still has problems, but that scared him. And he was really, he had a hit. It's hard for older people to change, right?
Yeah,
I mean, it's like mid-30s, late 30s is hard to convince people that everything that they've thought their whole life and what they've been doing has been wrong. But you need that like shocking moment, I think, for people in that age group to be like, oh my God, I have been.
It's worth it.
And
to take the time and
that's when he started kind of listening and consulting me and saying, okay, what are the stuff I can eat? Yeah. I'm going to the gym right now, and this was 3 months ago, and he goes to the gym like 5 times a week now, and he's eating better, and he's dropped 25 pounds or something. Wow. We haven't done his insulin again, but he's improving. He's definitely improving. So yeah, I see that talking to him on the phone now, like I see and hear a different person. Wow. Like, and now he's starting to talk smack to his friends, and it's like he's telling them, "Nah, dude, you gotta come to the gym with me. You gotta eat. Don't eat that." Like he's starting to see that transformation, which is completely inspiring. It's completely inspiring to have seen someone who he had really let himself go, like super obese, and he's really. It took a bit of a shock, and he's making that transformation. He's getting annoying like I am. Like he's telling other people how to eat better and to work out and treat themselves right. And I'm like, like the web is growing a little bit. Like he's going to help someone else fix themselves, and they're going to help someone else. And that's what your job is. Yeah. Your job is to inspire people, right?
It's a message that is so needed, because if there's anything that I think holds us back sometimes from making progress, is that, you know, we have in our minds that there's these like good foods and there's these bad foods, and there's like all this, you know, guilt and this shame here. Like food is so emotionally charged, right? And it's like then people get defensive, right?
But I like it.
Stop eating the bad foods.
But I like it.
The bad foods that are making them feel great, by the way, right? Because they've got their brains lighting up and their pleasure centers, their addictive pathways and all that. And you're like, yeah, go there. But when you frame it, so I love this, when you frame it as, okay, so what could I shift? What could I change here that's going to improve this, or, you know, help me to feel better, or build my energy? And I just think nutrition is so often framed in terms of the negative. Like, okay, so eat this so you don't get heart disease. Eat this so you don't get diabetes. Like, I don't think we hear so often, okay, so eat this for better energy, right? Let's think about like just day to day, like how you're functioning as a human being, right? How nutrition can inform that, you know? That's my feeling, at least, you know, even kind of going through, you know, just bachelor's in nutrition science, you know, I felt like so much was really just, okay, so how can you prevent this disease, right? And I don't think that's a good motivator for people. I mean, it wouldn't be, it's not for me, right? Like,
no, because you can't
what
even.
What might happen in 25 years? I'm not going to base my decision.
Exactly.
Based off of that, you know?
And those are just kind of terms that it's ad nauseum. People are like, yeah, I know. Yeah, I know. I know. I don't want cancer. Yeah, I don't know. I don't want heart disease. Yeah, I know. I know I'm not supposed to. And it gets to like you just falls on deaf ears because. But if you sell it as this is the way I sell. What sold me on meditation a couple of years ago was somebody seeing scientific studies. I don't know, it was Sam Harris or some other neuroscientist. It's like, you will get 10% happier. And I'm like, okay, you put a number on it and something I can associate. 10% happier. Yep. It's the same thing with nutrition for me. It's like, if you eat this, you will feel 40% better. You will have 100% more energy or whatever the numbers might be. And, you're probably not going to die from this stuff. Inflammation is reduced by 30% if you eat this and don't eat that. And, you eat a bowl of pasta. This is what happens to your inflammation levels. Like, it reaches that, like, numbers and stuff that you could really touch. Because it's so abstract. Absolutely. The idea of heart disease and heart attack is so abstract.
Totally. And then if people wait till they get to that point where they have, diagnosed diabetes, diagnosed whatever, right? It's like, oh, okay. So now you have to backpedal. You have to, right? And oftentimes, sometimes people are too far gone. You can't get things back to functioning.
Your body's been operating so bad for so long, it doesn't know how to do it anymore.
So I feel like if you can, get people on the continuum, maybe they're a little bit, not quite working optimally, systems are a little off balance, and try to bring them back, you can prevent, people from getting to that really extreme point, but also just can have such a beautiful life in the meantime because you're feeling so much better. You're feeling so much better.
That's the thing that's addictive to me now. And it's such a cliche, and it's something I've heard, and I kind of get it when I've heard people say it over the years. Like, no, that sure, that sugar, that cake feels great right now, but being healthy feels so much better. I'm like, shut up. This is delicious. I want that Chinese food and that soda. Right. And I mean, Chinese food is really good, but that would be that would be. I just think of that because that was my primary. I'm drinking soda with this meal. It was when I would get a big fat thing of Chinese food. I would have a can of Coke. So, I was like, no, that I don't care. This is delicious. I don't care how happy you are. You say you are. Like I don't care how many avocados you eat or how much kale or broccoli.
And what is that experience of happiness? Like, that's the thing. Is it really a feeling of being content, well-adjusted, comfortable in your body, which, like, at peace, happy in that way? Or is it just an addictive pathway lighting up, because a really extreme parallel here would be with the cocaine thing, Okay, so how happy, are you really in your life, if you live for cocaine binges?
I'm so glad I never tried cocaine.
Usually there's a lot of...
it sounds terrifying to me.
A lot of other things falling apart, just as a really extreme example, But in a similar way, I think sometimes people just, because they're feeling so artificially good, because of some of just the neurochemistry that's going on there, There's a whole other kind of definition, I think, of feeling good, being happy, just physically being well, feeling well, that you can't experience in the same way. I think it's different, I think it's different. It's a different type of feeling good, or feeling better.
You're making me think, and this is the way I would describe it for me, is the joy and happiness. And we have to use those words because I don't know if there's better words, so we say happy all the time.
Like, it's just the experience is so different for people, but it's a good...
But we know what we're talking about when we say happy.
We know what we're talking about,
I think this kind of happiness is more... It extends beyond just me. Like, okay, I had that pasta and I had that sugar hit and I'm like, ooh, I feel good. But it's just like here. Like, here's where I feel good. Like, everything around, I don't care. It's this mess... room is still a mess, or everyone, you're ugly, I don't like you, but now the happiness is like extended beyond, like, everything looks better, everything feels better.
I love that.
That's the way I think I would describe the way I feel, is that everything looks awesome now. Like, I love people more. I love family more. I love outdoors more. I love everything more. Whereas before, the way I was eating, and I worked out a lot all the time. I actually inadvertently lost 50 pounds in the past. I mean, that was a while. That's probably about 12 years ago. I was 206 pounds where I topped off. But I was a big, beefy dude who fueled myself with pasta and stuff. But it was all about... Once I made the transition and my brain started changing, I'm like, oh, those little moments of happiness, that bowl of pasta with the sausage, oh, so good. And the cheese everywhere on top, which cheese is awesome, but mixed with that, not so good. So, but I would feel happy here. And everything else out there would still see for that, in that moment, experience. And it'd be like that. And I would just be thinking, this makes me happy. Whereas everything else, I don't really care for you. But now it's like, I don't even think about what I don't even associate happiness with food anymore. The way I eat, I don't even think about it. I get bored with eating. I don't even look forward to eating because I just kind of like, okay, I got to eat. But I think of terms in nutrients.
Fuel. It's more like fuel.
It's 100% what it is. I think in terms of nutrients and fuel. So I'm not like, oh, let's go get a cheesecake tonight. No, I'm like, just give me something that's going to make me love everything around me, make my cognition sharper, make my thoughts more lined up and straightforward, make me be able to articulate what I'm thinking a bit better. That's another side effect I've discovered. I was like, oh, I can be more articulate than I ever was. So yeah, that's the way I think of it, is that everything, that joy, that happiness extends beyond just that bowl, that piece of cake. This is something I saw. I was just in Boston a couple of weeks ago with a friend, and these are these moments, like that moment last week when I had that little piece of frosting, like those moments that I'm just like, that wake me up. Yeah. We were out at a bar, and I had, and I also only drink maybe like 15 beers a year, tops. Like I'm not, I just...
It's a social thing.
Beer doesn't, like I do it for friends. Like that's I'll drink Guinness. So anyways, I'm there eating my fish and chips. I love fish and chips. I'll eat fish and chips all day. But there was a table next to it that had just sat down, and they're all pretty big, obese people. And the table next to them ordered like one of those chocolate lava volcano things or something, and the other table hadn't even ordered their regular food yet. But all those people at that table saw that and just like lost their minds, like, oh my god, look at, like, got happy looking at a piece of food. And I'm like, I don't think that's the way to do it. Like, I don't think, like, I'm judgy now too, and I can't help it, but that is what I saw. I recognize that as a very common human reaction to food. Is like, oh, look at that chocolate. Oh, it's flowing everywhere. Oh, there's cherries on top. Oh, you think we could get that with sprinkles and ice cream on the side? Like they were like, look at that. And I was like, I understand that reaction, but that's not good.
Yeah, and I think, if you reflect on that, I think it's very clear that it's not just because you have this square piece of something brown there, right? Like it's not just the thing itself that's appealing. It's because you have an association, right? Like they know, right? That sugar rush, right? That refined carbohydrate rush, like there's a shift there, right? For people who are on that roller coaster, especially, right? And I think of that as a big thing with blood sugar imbalance. Even if your blood sugar is at 400, right? Like I can feel that, right? Like with that frosting example, I can feel, okay, if I had a little too much sugar, right? How I'm off kilter, right? I'm just not in where I want to be, right? With how I'm feeling emotionally, with energy. And so I think one of the big clues for me with blood sugar imbalance is, even subclinical, is that, you feel really badly, you eat something super high in refined carbohydrates or sugar, and then you're a new person. Right? And so a lot of people have that experience, right? Which is interesting. But really, I mean, if you're being in tune, like you were saying, I think, as you change your diet, taste buds change, right? So things all of a sudden become less satisfying or less attractive to you, right? You can kind of down-regulate that. But if you're really in tune, it's amazing how 1, 2, 3 bites of something, right, can become satisfying versus it being, wow, I started eating this and now I can't stop, right? Now it's the whole cake or the whole, right? What a different experience you can have with food, right? Even with that type of thing, right? Where it's like you can actually kind of reprogram your response, but you have to put the work in, right? You have to make sure, like I always say, like you're well fueled first. Like we can't necessarily break the addiction by just saying stop eating it.
Right.
Right? Like let's work first on like, okay, we need to get you nourished, right? Because your body does not
such
have
an important
what it
word.
needs, like foundationally, right? Like you're going all day without eating. No, like, okay, let's just think about, okay, lots of good food on this end, and we will get there. We'll get there eventually.
That's one of the things I've said to some of my friends who need a lot of help with this, obese friends, and like, it's hard for you to get it past, but it is significant to think of this way. You can be obese and malnourished at the same time.
Absolutely, you can.
Like,
absolutely.
You're missing. You don't understand. Like, we think of malnourished. We think of those commercials in Africa we also watch growing up. Oh, this is malnourished. That these kids are malnourished. They're all slim. They're all bony. No, you can be super obese and just malnourished because we've described what the typical American eats, and there's nothing in it. It's just filler. Yeah. And just the... So that those people getting excited over that cake, like I got it. Like I understood that. But I also was like, it made me think of, okay, I perhaps at one point felt that way too. I probably wouldn't exclaim like, ah! But I get it. It does make you happy because you're right, that reward system, like you are a different person after you eat that. And for me, the alternative to that, the one that I discovered, is after a really good smoothie full of avocado, blueberry, kale, spinach, everything. I love a dozen ingredients. That's like my go-to.
Your go-to,
it's like, just give me diversity. I will go for diversity. Sure. And after I drink the first glass of it, it's like, woo! I'm like, what? Like I feel it in my fingertips. I feel it in my toes. I'm like, woo! Like that's the feeling. Like when she saw that cake and I was like, no, like I get it, but I want you to do that. Have that feeling after having a smoothie for a week straight or 2 weeks straight, and none of that stuff. And it's a longer happiness, a longer joy. Like it stays with you. Like things start tingling. And like, ooh. And you feel like a longer person through the whole day. Whereas opposed for how long is that cake going to make you feel good?
Gosh. Yeah.
12
it's really
minutes?
In the moment. Yeah. I mean,
like that frosting I had last week.
Like 15 minutes, 20 minutes, 30 minutes later, it's like they're down. That cake, that frosting I had last week, like maybe 6 or 7 minutes of feeling good, and then like, I'm just gonna go to bed because I know I'm about to not feel good. Just all right, restart tomorrow. We'll just reset. We'll reset. Yeah, but it's a really good point in that I think one of the other kind of misinformed ways of thinking or ways of approaching health is all about weight, right? Because something else I'll do is I have an InBody, right? Have you seen those? The body composition analyzer machines are amazing. They look, it's bioelectrical impedance analysis, and so it measures kind of lean body mass, skeletal muscle, fat mass.
No, I haven't had one of those. So it's better because we just go with BMI kind of, but this is way beyond that.
Yeah, so we go with I think there's a lot of issues, right? Of course, there's a ton of issues with BMI, right? Not only because you can be super built and super lean, right, and have a high BMI, right, but also because people within are, the normal, quote unquote, normal range of BMI, right, I think often, might have providers, perhaps, or the medical establishment telling them all is well, right? You're healthy because your weight is fine, right? Kind of these things that I think of as kind of superficial in some ways, right? Because ultimately, like you said, regardless of what your weight is, whether you're at a BMI of 16 or 18 or 22 or 32 or 54, you can be malnourished, right? Along any of those, right? Anywhere along that paradigm. And you can also have really awful or great body composition, right? Along maybe not the whole extreme, but even a bit above, right? Even a bit above that ideal, quote unquote, BMI, right? And that's what I see in practice quite a bit, is even people who come in, like just thinking back to inflammation, right? Knowing that, having maybe a little bit too much, is it too much, right? In quotes, but overrepresented adipose tissue or fat tissue versus muscle mass, right? Produces cytokines, right? Inflammatory cytokines, and so closely linked to depression, so big picture. But if you think like someone comes in at a normal body weight, right, but they are about 15 pounds below with muscle mass where they need to be, right, and actually they have tons of that visceral fat, right, around their organs, they look great on the outside, right, their clothes fit just fine, but still metabolically, right, they're not primed for both kind of endocrine system to work well, right? But also I think for even kind of just strength, function, and perhaps even mood, right? To the extent that, you just want to be careful, right, about what your body composition is made up of, because too much fat tissue, it's active, right? It's not just laying there. It's a metabolically active organ. So it's secreting, right?
Your body has to work hard to keep it there. It's
secreting hunger hormones. It's secreting, it secretes inflammatory cytokines, right? So that can play into some of the low-grade inflammation people experience, and also some of the mood concerns. But it also, just having it there also can really mess with your leptin receptivity. So leptin is kind of like, let me back up a little bit. So when you think of hunger hormones, right, you have leptin and ghrelin as the biggies. And so ghrelin is kind of that hormone that's saying, all right, time to eat, right? I'm getting hungry, right? Think of like ghrelin and growling, right? Your stomach growling. Where leptin is that hormone that comes along, right? Especially if you have adequate fat with your meals, right? It can be a little harder to get it to register if you're just eating a carbohydrate-rich diet. But you have that beautiful smoothie with your avocado, and your leptin kind of comes along and says, all right, we got what we need, right? We're set. Great, you can move on. You can stop eating, right? You're good. But when body composition isn't quite optimal, right, what can happen is you can have some leptin resistance, right? And so your body's not able to hear that message as clearly. This is like a well-documented phenomenon. So that just creates more problems for people, right, who maybe are trying to bring some normalcy to their eating patterns, who are trying to, get back to what their body needs, right, or wants, when they never feel full, or never feel satisfied, partly because of body composition. Yeah, but that can happen, certainly at really extreme ends of the weight scale, right, where BMI is very high. But I think it can also happen, closer to that normal, right? That normal, just kind of 18 to 24, right? 24.5, 24.9. So it's interesting, I think when we think about weight, because I think there's so much value put on it, where people really can be metabolically healthy, right, and can be well in their own bodies. I think oftentimes a little bit above, right, for some people, especially if it's just muscle, right? I mean, of course, right? That's not doing you any harm,
right?
Right? To just have a little more muscle mass on you. So yeah, I don't know what your thoughts are on that, but it's something I've just experienced, especially because I think there's so much value, especially women put so much value around their weight, but it's really just around the number. They're not thinking about what's behind that necessarily. You know what I mean?
Some of my perceptions about what constitutes healthy go beyond. Of course, just overweight is the thing that you see. It's visceral. It has an effect, and you're like, okay, all right, I get it. So there are plenty of overweight people that are healthy, and where I've seen a lot of this is the last several years too. I've gotten a little bit more into MMA, like watching MMA. I mentioned Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu earlier, and some of those dudes are monsters. Like you look at them and you're like, wow, you got a lot of body fat on you. But their cardio is through the roof, their strength is through the roof, and metabolically, like, they are hyper healthy. They're super healthy. So there's some people that, like, okay, they're just big people, I think. I don't know. But there's a couple of them, and maybe football players too. Some. But it's, so I don't know, but what, typically obese people are unhealthy. Typically, I think. But there's some athletes where it does work. It seems to work, but I think those are just unique, high level individuals. For the average person, being big is not good, I think. Let's not even know if I think that's just a fact.
Yeah, and I think, but like you were saying, I think it does come back to, maybe bringing some of the focus away from weight, which can feel, I think people can feel really defeated when it comes to weight, especially if they've tried to lose, right, and have constantly just regained and regained.
If you're keeping score,
if you're
looking at a number and you're keeping score, then you can feel defeated.
Yeah, but if you instead can shift, right, back to, okay, so foundationally, like what really matters here, like what do you have control over, right? And it's really the behavioral stuff, right? That's where success can be measured, because that's what you are able to manipulate in your own life, right? Weight, I think it's complicated. I think like sometimes it's easy. Like somebody can, maybe if they're drinking soda all day, some people can give up soda and they lose their 20, 30 pounds, whatever, right? And that was easy for them, right? But for some people, it's a lifelong struggle, right? And so I don't do a ton of weight management, for a number of reasons, but because I feel like, yeah, in order to really address those issues, I feel like somebody's got to be able to really think about weight in a different way, where they're thinking about, okay, so what's the root here, right? What's the root of health, you know? And let's just get back to that, focus on that for a while, and try to get away from the weight a bit. I say that, and I think it's important to think about, because when weight is the only thing that matters, right? It really sets you up for this whole environment of starvation crash dieting, right?
Yeah.
Kind of binge, restrict, craving cycle, like just really screwy stuff with food, right? But if instead you can shift to just thinking about, okay, regardless of where I'm at with my weight, like I'm going to start thinking about food as information, right? And start structuring, right, my diet intelligently around that. And I'm going to trust that weight, right, is going to adjust, right, and settle to where it's going to be in this moment, you know? Because I think really the only way to feel like you're really controlling weight is by counting calories, right?
Right.
And then when you do that, it's like, guess what? Like the avocados, the nuts and seeds, right? The almond butter, like all of that's kind of like people are like, I'm not going to eat that because I need to stay on a 1,200 calorie.
My chart says
calorie diet, right?
I can't have that. Yeah.
And so, yeah, I think it becomes a really difficult, just kind of thing to navigate. You know what I mean? When it's just all about the numbers on the scale, because I do feel like often weight takes care of itself. You know, and I say that cautiously because for some people,
it does. That's exactly the things I've said.
Itself, you know, when you just focus on what's really meaningful, right? Not that weight's not important, it is, but just day to day, right? What you're able to control and manipulate using the knowledge we have available to us, right?
The internet's so great. The internet is so great. It has so much good information, and it's been life-changing for me. That's the problem. As with solving any problem, obesity, weight, whatever world problem you're trying to solve, humans were naturally like, just give me what's easiest. But everything's nuanced. Like it's not about the weight. If you want to be healthy, you have to go all the routes that you've said. But we want the easy thing. Like it's just about keeping numbers, right? It's just about my calories, right? And you mentioned we talked about smoothies several times. And the lectin, is that what you said? Leptin resistance. So that was. I also said how I sometimes get bored with eating. Like I just don't. I'm just like But I think sometimes I feel so nourished after a smoothie, after a good smoothie and some grass-fed beef or some elk or something delicious like that. I kind of forget to eat because I'm just like, I don't feel hungry. I just feel, I feel awesome. I realize it's been 5, 6, 7 hours. I'm like, oh crap, I got to eat again. Crap, I got to eat. Like, what am I going to go eat now?
Because you feel satisfied.
Because I feel completely satisfied. And that's been another change too. That's like that's my body telling me, and I kind of like that feeling because I've gone most of my life without that feeling. Like, no, dude, you got to eat right now, and then I would get cranky. I'd be so mad. I'd be so mean. That's talking about moodiness. That's long gone. I used to be like a cranky like, give me my food. Like the bad bacteria says, give me those carbs, give me that sugar. And now I'm in a good mood, and when I feel hungry, I'm just like, okay, I gotta go eat something now. It's not angry. It's not like, no, stop the car. I need something. It's no desperation. And like I said, it actually kind of veers more towards boredom. Like, I have to stop doing what I'm doing because I have to eat. Crap. All right.
And it kind of builds. Yep.
So unfortunately, for me, it's a little unfortunate in that way, is that I've lost more weight than I ever anticipated. Like I was still happy around like 15 pounds bigger than I am right now, but I'm not gaining it back because I like to eat healthy, and that's tough to gain weight and eat really, at least at this age, like late 30s. It's like, oh, okay, you can't really manipulate your weight like you used to. So, but at the end of the day, I'm also like, but if I feel good, I kind of don't care. Like as long as I stay right here, a little in this range,
weight kind of settle.
Forget about the weight. Like you've said, like, but I still miss those 15, 20 pounds because they were good. They were good pounds. I miss them, but the way I feel now way outweighs, so to speak, those feelings.
It's so interesting. Just I think the information that you glean from just your own experience around food, right, is so valuable if you take the time, right? I know for myself, really the thing I think that's made the biggest impact, you know, in my ability to regulate hunger, fullness, and to feel satisfied is just my willingness to introduce high quality fat sources throughout the day, because that was something for so long, right? Because I grew up, right? I was trained in, right, this kind of calorie paradigm, this model. That was my way of eating my way of thinking for such a long time. And so for me, kind of in my younger years, right, my teenage years and all of that, a lot of my passion for disordered eating comes out of just myself, right? Just never feeling, like you said, satisfied, right? Always feeling like I'm looking for something, like I'm hungry, like I'm just never okay, you know, with what I've had, right? And so it's really been, for me, even within the past 5 years or so, right, just kind of breaking that ceiling, you know, of saying like, okay, I've just got to totally shift my way of thinking here, and I've just got to be okay, you know, with just, you know, let's just see. So lots of almonds, and, you know, bringing back red meat, right, was vegetarian for a while, and it was not for me. It was just not for me. I didn't function optimally there, you know, and, you know, avocados, things like that, but being intentional about having a lot of it, you know, like every meal, right, being careful to have it, because otherwise I notice, right, I am not feeling fulfilled. You know, I'm still looking for something. My body does not know I've had enough. And that's been my personal experience, right, as I know that, okay, like in order to really nourish myself well, and for my body to send me clear messages, like I have to be really attentive to what every meal contains, you know, even if it's just proportions, right, of protein and fat, especially, right, like those are the biggies for me, you know, those are the biggies. And if I don't have it regularly, like, you know, I can feel it, you know, I can feel it even meal to meal, day to day. So it's interesting, but yeah, I've noticed the same, is that, you know, in years past, I might have been just really, really shaky, or just feeling like I need food now. And now it's like I can go much longer periods of time. Even if I know that, you know, my body's starting to ask for fuel, I'm like, I'm okay.
Right.
Right? I'm okay. Like I can.
There's no rush.
A little bit longer.
You're going to be okay. You're not going to get cranky.
And what a relief. What a relief, right? To be able to live your life in that way, instead of just being just in a constant pursuit, right, for that next thing to just like lift you up. right. Constantly having to feed that furnace. Yeah. And now that you don't, it's a different relationship with food. It's a different relationship. Do you know do you like oysters? You know, I've never really developed that love with oysters. Okay. Maybe. I've tried. When was the last time you tried an oyster? About 1.5 years ago. Okay. It's still not for you? It's just the consistency. Did you just try one? You know? Did you just have one? Had one. So I think I mentioned earlier, we lived in South Florida for a while. Yeah. And you're not really getting oysters down there. Not really. At least not like North Atlantic ones that kind of grew up with. Ones, So we moved back up here, and last summer we went to Maine for the first time together. Oh, wow. And we were there for 3 days. I think I ate 30 or something oysters and like nine lobsters. But anyways, the oysters. Want to talk about foods? Like I mentioned, like the smoothie making me go, woo! Like I feel it. Oysters are, bar none, for me, my most energizing and like just like rocket fuel. That's amazing. For me, if I eat a dozen oysters, I think... It has a lot of these micronutrients, like high zinc, high magnesium, I believe, and high iron. Yep, one of the highest sources. It jacks me to the moon. I get so happy. I mean, I'm sure that's where the cliches about it being an aphrodisiac come from. Is it just you just feel invigorated? Yes. Like I'm like, okay, what are we doing? I just had a dozen oysters. What are we doing? Where are we going? The world. Like you want to do something. Let's conquer the world. Yep. And for me. I can't eat enough oysters. So one of the things that came up at ISNPR was that Drew Ramsey, that psychiatrist I was telling you about, he has been working on this research project where they just went into, so they identified the micronutrients that seem to be really important for brain health, for mood, regulation, depression, all of that. Then they went basically to these nutrient databases and figured out, okay, so what foods contain them, right? And did this whole big analysis project where they listed by content, brought it all together. And so they came up with these brain food scores. So if you look at his work, you'll find this. But oysters and liver, right, were the foods that, right? Some of the top 2 foods, like the things, and this just cracked me up because as they're going through, I'm like, okay, I'm not seeing skinless chicken breast on there. I'm not seeing fat-free dairy. There was whole milk. Whole milk dairy was at, closer to the bottom of one. But I thought there is just nothing that Americans eat on this list. But but oysters and liver is another thing that I've been like inching toward because it's not something. Sardines has been my newest introduction.
Oh, I love me some sardines.
I just need, to begin eating sardines. So, my husband loves them. And so I've just,
most of them come from Portugal. They're in his genes.
And so get the good stuff. So, but liver is kind of my next challenge for myself.
That is a challenge.
The more I learn about it, the more I'm like, I have got to get this stuff in my diet. It's so funny because you can buy like liver capsules, things like that. I'm like, maybe I'll go there, but I've just got to try. So I've heard about using it and kind of just getting it into really small shreds and mixing it into other things, right? So that's kind of the direction I'm headed in. I just a couple of weeks ago found a source online for some good quality liver, like grass-fed liver. Have you seen it?
No,
here
just go to the farmer's market.
Well?
I have farmer's market liver in my freezer right now. Grass-fed calves liver. Well, you could get calves liver or just regular full cow liver.
Or regular. All right, that's gonna have to be my
get the farmer's market.
Over
it's
the next
fantastic.
Week and bring it in.
Or
bring it in. Yeah.
I really have to look into the health, the other ingredients in it, but I love liverwurst. I don't know how great that is for me, but I love it and it makes me feel awesome. There's an old German place in Albany called Rolf's. It's been there forever. And actually my German landlord, 85-year-old German landlord's like, if you like liverwurst, go there. Because I thought liverwurst was gross. Growing up as a kid, I was like, gross, not interested. And I go to Rolf's and I'm like, oh, this is real liverwurst. And when I go there, I tend to get like 2 or 3 pounds worth, and I'll eat all in a week. I'll demolish it.
I wonder how they make it.
Yeah, I think it's I'm gonna have next time I go in there, give me the information. Because I was primarily looking just for iron sources, because last blood panel I had, they're like, oh, your iron's a little bit low. So I go hardcore. When you tell me something's low and can be fixed, like if I ever sit down, if I ever have an appointment with you and we do some tests, and you tell me what's low, I'm going to go hardcore.
Like all the way.
I will go hardcore into whatever to fix that, to get that number better. Yes. So, I think they use like pork liver. I don't know if that's better than... I don't know, but it's delicious, and it gives me my iron shots, and there's probably other delicious, probably some gross stuff in there. But that is a better way. Here's my story about... Because diving right into liver can be tough. It'll smell up...
Tell me how you brought it in, because...
It was hard, because as a kid, my dad used to eat liver and onions, and it smelled up the house, and it was disgusting, and I can still think of it. And 2 different times... my mom made liver for all of us. Like, this is our meat tonight. We're all eating liver. First time, I was like, I can't eat this. I don't want any of this. Not going to do it. And they kind of let me, like, fine, don't eat it. Blah, 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 blah. Then, however many months or year later or so, it was dinner. It was liver for dinner again. I was like, Mom, I still don't want this. This is not good. Just try a bite. Just try a bite. Just try a bite. Mom, I don't want this. Try a bite. It's what's for dinner. You have to eat. I guess if you're a parent, I don't have kids, but as a parent, if your kid doesn't eat, it's probably like, freaking eat. Like, we have a dog. Like, I mentioned the dog. Like, if he doesn't eat, I'm like, why aren't you eating all your food? So I get it. So I was like, fine, Mom. Like, she was really pressuring me to eat the damn liver. So I took a bite of the liver, and I threw up everywhere on the kitchen table. And she's like, okay, you don't have to eat liver anymore. So I've been dealing with that for forever.
The memories,
that was my experience with liver.
Wow.
Now, like I said, it still doesn't taste awesome to me. The smell still brings me back to a time when I wasn't so excited about it. But with the way it makes me feel, woohoo! So for me, and then the more I learn about what's in it, like you said, like, oh my God, look how many boxes this checks. This daily, weekly, boom, 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 all these nutrients. Couple that with some delicious smoothie I'm making, like, game over. Like, that's it. I'm done eating for a week.
I know.
And so I look at it that way now. Like, just, it doesn't make me want to puke, thankfully. There's no reaction like that. But I still have my concerns.
Ended up just sauteing, like you just.
Yeah, saute, and I have made liver pate to try to make it more palatable. And it wasn't that good, but I would still eat it until I couldn't do it anymore. It's still hard to get over that hurdle a little bit, but that's why the liverwurst for me is so delicious, made by these professional Germans with old German, old world recipes.
So interesting.
But I have to find out.
It has less of a smell to it.
It has no smell. It's just it just feels so rich. Like you're eating you're eating something is in there. It's really, 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 really decadent. And there's different flavors, different textures. There's and there's the blood kind, the blood sausage, the Blutwurst, and it's red, has blood in it. So I'm like, okay, there's some more iron in there. Give me that. So I've gotten into the big leagues. So I go hard now with my livers, with my smoothies, with spicy food. I can eat. Spicy food is a whole other ballgame. Nobody could compete with me on spicy food, except like crazy people who just eat the extract and stuff. Right. But whenever I go to say an Indian restaurant or an Asian restaurant and I order something spicy, I say, make it as spicy as you can. And they always what? I was like, not white boy hot. I was like, make it the way hot to be. Like, make it that hot. And they're like, you're not going to be okay. Sometimes they'll be like, the chef won't make it that hot for you, but here's a side of the hot stuff. And I'll just dump it on. And more than once or twice or three times, they're like, you ate all of that? I was like, I wasn't lying to you. Like, this isn't a game for me. I like that pain.
This is really what I wanted.
And the more I learn about it, about how it helps regulate inflammation, decreases inflammation, the health stuff, I'm like, this is just part of the elixir of me. Liver is still one of those like extreme ones. Like I put that up there with my love for heat, and it's not that heat is always enjoyable, but I know what it does for me, and that's how I feel about liver.
Just organ meats in general. I know the whole, every time I'm kind of tapped into the paleo movement or blogs, around just extolling the benefits of organ meats, talking about how many of those compounds, whether it just be, so CoQ10, right? The collagen, right?
I love collagen.
Just thinking about like all these things, right? Because of the cuts we're choosing, right? We're not getting. We're just not getting the cartilage. We're not getting the organ meats, And it's just such a departure from the way our ancestors, right?
They ate everything.
What I've eaten. So, so that's kind of my current struggle is just, I'm just there. I'm like working it out in my mind. It's like, how am I going to approach this,
Approach it scientifically. Because that's the way I think of it.
Density,
I think it's not Doug eating that piece of liver. It's maybe the bacteria. Or maybe it's like I separate what I like versus what is good for me. Like that's a big hurdle to get over. But it's fun. Like I like having discipline. I like making myself uncomfortable. What was I gonna say? So we talked liver and I forgot what I was gonna say. Go ahead. But it was good.
So I think bringing in small amounts into something else I'm doing, whether it be like a grass-fed burger, whatever it is, or stew, that feels manageable. That feels manageable to me because I've had it, same thing, just the experience of smelling it. There's that a little bit of an aversion still.
When you smell the gaminess,
so it's the
first time you're like, wait, what?
But I have hope for myself that if I introduce it slowly, right, more and more and more and more, that I can overcome that, because I know that, my experience with other foods has changed, right, quite dramatically. So love that. Farmer's market, looking for just get the good stuff, right, and
get it from there. Go for a swim in the deep end. Oh, this is what I was just thinking because we're talking about organ meats. One of the most memorable and most delicious pieces of meat I've ever had was wild duck heart. It was a duck heart, duck that my friend shot. My friend was out hunting with his dad, killed a bunch of ducks, gave me a couple ducks, and I had to clean one and crap for which was awesome, by the way. I would rather I have killed them, but it was still pretty cool to have. My friend gave me a full duck, and I had to clean it, pluck all the feathers, take some of the shot from the shotgun out of them.
Oh my gosh! Wow.
So it was like a real connection to this thing. So I took all the organs out first before I put it on a bed of vegetables and baked it for a little while. And I cooked the liver and I ate that. And I was like, ooh, that was some good liver. I think I might have eaten a little bit of the lung or something, or something else, another unidentifiable organ part. But I was like, okay, this is the heart. And I was like, you can eat duck heart, sure, right? I'm sure. And I'm pretty sure I looked it up, and it was just like, don't overcook it. It was like, can you eat wild duck heart? And it was like, yeah, it's awesome. Yes. Just don't overcook it, because you want it reddish. So there I am sauteing this duck heart, and I'm like, okay, I'm going in. Like, I let it cool down for a little bit, and it was like medium rare, closer to like really more rare than medium. Gosh, yeah. And I took a bite out of it. It was the finest meat I had ever. I was like, oh my God. Like, I couldn't believe that a heart would taste that good. It was a little old thing. Like, it was that. Yeah. But I offered my girlfriend some, but she was not interested. But I was so funny. I was like, this was so good.
Once upon a time, I did not have the same experience, but once upon a time we were at a churrascaria, right? This is back when I was
Brazilian
here. Yep.
Like, just piles of meat.
They had chicken heart, right? Chicken heart.
Yeah.
And I remember trying it, and it was rubbery, right? I remember it just was
not done
like
right.
A bouncy ball.
Yeah.
Bouncy ball. And so that was the last time.
But
I went there, last time.
But
those experiences are powerful.
It is.
You create these like absolute aversions, right? And yeah, if you decide you want to get to the other side, it's like that. You're like, how am I going to do this? Let's work through this.
This duck that I cooked, so that the organ meat was delicious. But the duck, also, because it's wild, doesn't have a lot of fat on it. You don't want to overcook it at all. Yeah. This was the reddest meat I had ever eaten in my life. And my girlfriend did eat some of that meat. And she's like, oh my God, this tastes like the best steak I've ever had. It was so red. And that's another thing. I show people pictures of it. They're like, how could you eat something that red? I'm like, you don't understand how good that is. Like, there's something primal about it. And you mentioned chicken earlier, and just mentioned chicken now, too, the chicken heart.
Right. Yeah.
I can't eat chicken much anymore. Yeah. Like, it feels empty to me. Like, something that's really so deep red, like really good grass-fed beef or elk or duck like that. I'm like, some is so, like, you feel the nutrients. I feel my body's sensitivity to, like, oh, there's stuff in there. Chicken is hard for me to eat anymore. I get very bored with it.
Chicken's really interesting.
It's bland. And I saw something recently, I don't know if it was 20% or 33% of the American diet is like some form of chicken tenders or something. Like it's a big number.
Yeah, when you pull up those analyses of where our calories are coming from, the biggies are mixed chicken dishes. Pizza is one of them, right? Mixed pasta dishes, breads and baked goods, right? And there's one other. I can't remember what it is, but those are the top 5 sources of calories.
That's terrifying.
I know, but it's chicken everywhere for everyone, right? And so, yeah, I mean, when I think about, like, for myself, right, I think, okay, where can I get good, high quality, complete protein, right? Where can I splurge, right, and buy the good quality stuff, right, the high quality animal proteins? I've kind of come to the place in my life where I think, okay, so I know for nutrition purposes that I want that really good seafood, right? Sardines, right? Wild caught salmon, etc. Oysters, maybe someday, yes. The red meat to me makes a lot of, at this point, right? It makes a lot of sense because I know what's in it, right? I know the way I feel before and after, right? Have a good response to it. And then, plant proteins, right? So for me, do well with quinoa and beans and lentils, right? Cook them well, right? And feel I do well with them as long as I have, right? Those other high eggs, right? But the other stuff like chicken and turkey, things like that, it just, like, I recognize it's a protein source and I get that. But when I'm thinking about, okay, what can I eat that will help me to feel my best, right? I'm thinking, okay, this isn't really feeding my microbiome, right? In a way that a nice bowl of black beans, right, that have been soaked for a day, cooked well, right? Would, right? It doesn't have that same micronutrient density as the grass-fed red meat would, right? And so I just don't feel, even intellectually, right, mentally, I'm just not feeling like, oh, this is something I really need in my diet, right? This isn't something I feel like I'm getting an incredible amount of benefit from. So it's always so interesting to me to hear people say, because I hear this a lot, not even in private practice, but just in general, working as a dietitian. Oh yeah, my diet is so healthy. I eat tons of chicken and I never eat any red meat. And And I kind of think to myself, oh, like, you know, it's just this way you're framing healthy, right? It's just because it falls on the good food list that you've seen once upon a time, right? And it's not on the red meat's on the bad food list, right?
You've heard a doctor say it, your friends say it, everybody just says it to each other.
Right. I know. But then you think, yeah, like, okay, so this is also really interesting that, you know, 20, 25 years ago, you think of the ways that chicken was bred, right? And probably organic chicken is in many cases similar, right? If it's pastured and responsibly done. But chicken used to have a pretty significant proportion of omega-3 fatty acids to it, right? There used to be long chain omega-3 fatty acids readily available in chicken. Now?
Because they used to eat grass and bugs and worms and mice.
So not so much anymore. And so, yeah, I think, you know, when it comes to those, it's kind of like, okay, so what did they eat? You know, there's all this talk about arsenic content, right, in chicken, which is valid, right? It's valid. So to me, it comes down with meats. It comes down to the sourcing, the quality, what they ate, the fatty acid composition, and the nutrient density. And for me, you know, a big family pack worth of chicken, you know, I'm like, I don't feel like it really meets, although many people say it's, you know, like a core of a healthy diet, you know, for me, you know, it just doesn't seem to kind of fit my criteria. You know what I mean? For what makes sense to me to just fuel my body, you know what I mean? And make sure I'm getting kind of what I need. So it's interesting that it's just a shift, I think, away from mainstream.
Right. And
thinking, you know?
What you said, just to echo that, is I look at packs of chicken and turkeys. They're just, I just see protein.
Yeah.
Like, what else is it? There's nothing, I don't see anything else in there for me.
Going to get.
Like, I just see protein. Right. So, I'm like, there's really, why waste my time? Right. And that's one of the only losses I feel of my new world of diet is how much I used to love fried chicken. I love fried chicken so much. And I had it a couple months ago for the first time in a while. And I was like, oh, no, this is gross. I'm not the same. I was hungry. I ate a lot of it. And I just was hungry afterwards. I'm like, there was nothing in there for me. And I went home probably later that night and had some just grass-fed beef. And I was like, okay, I feel normal again. But the chicken, it just felt empty. Like, you feel things that are empty now, right? Like a piece of bread that might sneak its way into your mouth occasionally. It's just like, that's empty. That was, like, I get it when people say empty calories. I'm like, no, it's beyond that. Like, you feel empty. Like, okay, I need more stuff. So that's been sad. Yeah, that's a good. And I think about chicken is everywhere. And I think about, oh my God, how many chickens are we killing every day? Where are they? Are they all in Iowa? Where are they? Like, I start to feel terrible. Like, it's just a chicken holocaust, like, every day to keep up with this demand. Right. Should we check what time it is?
Yeah,
because I get really caught up.
I have my laptop here.
Because I get very caught up. It's 11:48.
11:48. I gotta run.
Oh yeah. All right. Let's wrap this up. I totally lost track.
Yeah, that is
I love these conversations.
Yeah, just I have a 12 o'clock appointment. So
all right, we're good.
Funny.
Maybe I subconsciously noticed the sun. I'm like, okay, it's not shining in anymore. It might be right about. All right.
So let's end this on a positive note. So takeaways, right? So takeaways, you know, what to do, right? To do with all this information just kind of goes back to just whole food, good food, right? Worrying less about amounts, maybe more about quality, and just thinking in terms of, just what food can empower you to do and how it can allow you to feel, you know, versus what's healthy or not.
We can do it.
Healthy or not, right?
Basically, this is what I say all the time. We have to undo the damage our parents' generation did. Because their grandparents, they ate right. They ate well. And then they're in the 70s and 80s. They screwed everything up.
Marshmallow casseroles, they knew no better.
Yes.
They knew no better.
So let's take back our health. All right. People can find you in Troy.
Yeah, find me in Troy. My website is www.nourishedbrainsolutions.
I'll put it up on the on the podcast.
So that's
Sarah Ferreira.
So thanks, Doug. This was a lot of fun.
Thank you. This is fun. Let's do it again because there's still so much more to talk about. It's fascinating.
Yeah, we need a whole day next time.
You're right. And by then, there'll be more research out, I'm sure. Because everyone's going hard at this, and we want to be healthy.
We do.
Bye, everyone. Thank you.
Thanks.
This was a blast.
Cool.
This was a blast.
Thank
this was a lot of fun.
Much. Wow.
This